Jacob. So
this dude showing up with a freaking 10
There's
ton.
so much, and even if we had more, I don't think it.
oh my god.
Vaughn getting just does a burn.
No, that is that Vaughn?
No, I like this.
You also have gigantic hands.
In that car right now. We didn't fly all the ways here to watch you walk around in a sling.
How hot? Have you checked the weather yet? Do you think St. Louis is going to be scorching hot? I have no idea. I haven't checked the weather yet. But you know what is hot? This deal I got for you, which is saving $5 by using OZSTL at checkout. That's right. Do it. Just go for it. Go do it. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Outerzone, the official podcast of Formula Drift. My name is Jacob Gettins, and today we have Tony Angelo on.
Yeah.
Does it sound weird to go by Anthony, or is that
don't call me that.
Okay, well, yeah, that's cool. Is that just like stuck with the family at this point?
That's just the family, and they mostly call me Ant.
Really?
Yeah, mostly, yeah.
Okay, all right.
That's what I grew up as.
That's fair. That's fair. We're here. Does the shop have a name, or is it just the Stay Tuned shop? Or?
It's just a Stay Tuned shop. We used to call it the Snake Pit, which was kind of like a holdover from my drift shop, but
okay.
I don't know, we don't really use it.
Was the old drift shop the Snake Pit then?
Yeah.
Got it. You didn't decide to call it Snake Pit 2.0 or?
No, we did for a while. It just didn't stick.
It just didn't stick.
Yeah.
It's you're giving me kind of a quick rundown on this, like World War II.
Yeah.
Original trusses, the gantry,
Yeah, World War II machine shop. They built gunship guns in here.
That's cool.
So barrels as big as you are. And the big trough in the floor is for lathes and machining machines.
Okay.
And then the back, there's actually a false floor to the basement because the boring bar that actually did the rifling and the final machining or whatever they were so tall, it had to go 2 stories.
That's crazy.
So, yeah.
So with these, basically with the slots in the floor, that was to move the machinery back and forth?
No, that's where the cables were for the 440 power, the 3-phase power.
Got it, okay. I wasn't sure if it was that big where they had to, this right here was where the lathe was or something like that.
No, they used the crane. They would take the crane, pick up the barrels would come in next door. That's why there's an old school drop-off window above the door. And then they would pick them up with the crane. They'd roll them over, pick them up with the crane, and then move them from machine to machine, lathe or whatever, mill. And then they'd finally bore them standing up somehow off the crane.
Damn, that's wild.
All by hand, and then they would send them out to, the Pacific Theater or whatever, dude.
Have you gone back and traced potentially what ships they would have gone on?
I have not gone that hard,
okay.
And I don't know that we could find it, but the family that built it still owns it.
Okay.
So a distant nephew or something owns it, and we rent this place actually, even though we love it and wouldn't totally buy it. But
yeah, one day maybe.
Maybe.
You just gotta maybe just try and find one of your cousins that could marry into the family
that'd be cool.
or that kind
That's
of thing.
True.
I need you to take one for the team here.
I didn't think about that.
We really need to do this.
Yes.
Yeah. Your camera.
Don't buy it. Buy into the family. Yeah.
There's going to be a great wedding gift for you, but
yes.
I'm going to need you to do this for us.
Yeah, I like it.
How's the transition been to now? I mean, we'll get into the whole career, but most recently, just the YouTube side of things. I think a lot of people look at it and go oh, it must be awesome to be a YouTuber, not understanding the finances of the situation.
Well, it was certainly a big risk. We were well positioned for it, or I was well positioned for it. I had a pretty built-in following. I had done so much at Motor Trend as far as writing outlines and dealing with editing and know how to make a story and also doing the hosting and whatever. So I feel like I knew a lot about how to make a show.
Yeah.
But certainly still it was will people watch it? Will they accept it? Can we do it week in and week out? Can we get a good team together? I'm not a self-starter / I'm not I couldn't do this by myself.
Okay, gotcha.
I'm not one of those people. I know that there are people like that. I'm not one of them.
Yeah.
I need somebody with me at least being let's do this. And I'm yeah, let's do it. So, but it's been really cool. We are, I kind of did a half step. I was I'm leaving Motor Trend. And then I actually went to Hoonigan for 7 months, which I don't think a lot of people know because we didn't really do anything. Yeah. It was kind of messy there, and I think they were figuring their stuff out. And I was I don't want to work here anymore.
Got it.
It was mostly we felt very handicapped, very handcuffed in our ability to get stuff done. So we were we're leaving, and then Haggerty was come work for us, and I really just wanted to do my own thing. But Haggerty was at least offering hey, just do your own thing. We'll put it on our channel, which was really, really difficult for people to accept. Why are you here? And I think it's really hard to have a channel that has just so much variety. It's really tough for the algorithm to say, oh, this is a good channel because it's Tuesdays are terrible, and then Wednesdays are insane. When Camisa comes on, it's insane, and then people can't continually come back. So when we left there, which was they definitely fired us. But it was all business stuff. They had made some huge cuts.
It
in
was
the company.
numbers and stuff.
It was numbers, and it wasn't our guys. And the people at Video actually gave us a really nice, a little bit of runway to help us do our own thing.
That's
so
good.
all good stuff. But yeah, for the last a little over 2 years, we've been doing our own thing, and it's been cool. And yes, I said this years ago, like, you see the fun stuff and you see like, oh, those guys are making a living and they're paying their friends and they're building lots of cars that I own, but it's a ton of work, and it's been 25 years or whatever of thrashing and being consumed by all this stuff to get here.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, I think what's interesting, especially with Stay Tuned, is like it feels like very much like a continuation of Hot Rod Garage.
Yeah.
But less produced in a really good way. Like, I grew up on like Saturday morning power block, right? It's just,
of course.
Pretty much all of us did, right?
Yeah.
And it was really, really cool to more or less grow up with those guys. But there was always that craving of like, okay, we come back Saturday and a bunch of shit happened that we didn't get to see.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, we put the engine together. I'm like, no, that's what I wanted to learn. Like, why are we glossing over this? And I feel like, especially with Stay Tuned, you'll kind of highlight a part where you're like, we really haven't talked about this part of building a car yet. Why don't we just take a minute, let's take a pause and go, okay, this is kind of how we do this. You guys maybe saw us put this together last time, so we're going to gloss over that this time, but we're going to make sure to focus in on that. And I wasn't sure if that was something cognizant that you're planning on doing, or you're just like, you're kind of looking back on shit, we didn't really talk about this last time and we should do it this time.
I mean, anytime I can give like a tip, certainly how to do something, how to figure something out, how to build something, I like to do it. But, I've given some of the tips. I'm like, I've told people how to do that 11 times.
Right,
so I'm not doing that one again, but what else is there? So we're always looking for that, for sure. And yeah, we kind of keep it very real. Like, some weeks we get a ton done, some weeks we don't.
Yeah.
Some cars fight us like crazy. Sometimes you're like, wow, that worked out awesome. We are always fighting towards some cool payoff, which people are like, you just don't have to do that. But in my brain, I want to.
Yeah.
I want the car to run. I want it to drive. I want it to do what I go fast. Whatever it is, whatever hurdle we're trying to get over, I want to do it almost every week. But thank you. I had a huge hand in the creative side of HRG, certainly the last 6 years or so. So I think that show felt like my show, and this show obviously feels like my show.
When you were doing the purchasing, like a lot of the developing, like parts ordering, stuff like that on HR, like at least in the last half of it, you had mentioned previously, like that kind of became your baby. I don't know if that was something that was assigned to you, or you're just like, I just want to handle this because then I know it's done, and if it fails, then it's on me.
Kind of. It really, a thing happened in the first year. We kind of like, not circled the drain, but we were like trying to figure it out. We were sort of teething problems. I'd come from a show that was David's show, essentially.
Right.
David and I love the dude, brilliant dude. We talk constantly. But he's definitely in a different vein. He knows old V8 motors inside and out more than almost anybody.
Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah, it's wild. Or I can put that together and I can do the research. I can certainly apply it. And I know a bit more now, but I know how to build a suspension and make cars handle. And I want everything to handle really well. It's just different.
Yeah.
And I know, I come from building turbos and diesel trucks and drift cars. So I know high-strung 4-cylinders and rotaries. So it was definitely like, after a year, they were like, just let this kid kind of do what he wants. And let's just see if you're going to do it, let's do it.
Yeah.
And so they did. Then we did my diesel truck with the 12-valve swap. We did the turbo Camaro, which was our first real big hit, and then a bunch. And then eventually they were like, it's just do whatever. They were like, you do it. This is your show. Kind of do it. I don't think there was ever like a passing of the baton, but David was like, it's rocking and rolling. This is not my show. Like, I don't need to be overseeing it all.
Yeah, and I think the term hot rod has changed over the years. Like, it became, it started with people taking larger engines and putting them in smaller chassis, or rebuilding an upgrade they couldn't afford from factory. And really, that's what modern tuning is now. It's just not in that same chassis, right? Like, it's taking something that was to me, hot rodding is taking something that was handed down to you or is really cheap and finding the most performance for the lowest amount of money you possibly can. That to me is the root of hot rodding. And for some people, that's 70s, for some people that's 90s. We got the Fox body in front of us. Like, it's just a general term for people making the best out of what they have.
Yeah, I think it's about building what you want, making your car do what you want it to do or look how you want it to look. by being creative and resourceful.
Yeah.
Like whatever you have at your disposal, figuring out how to make it better, which is like the best case of that is like dudes that put blowers on cars in the late 30s.
Right.
When they came back from the war, they were like, oh, somebody was smart enough to figure out these,
Two-stroke
superchargers. You could bolt them. They just cram air into stuff. Let's put one on top of a flathead and see what happens.
Right.
And then they were off to the races. So that's been like, sort of how I've always been. And it's been kind of that. Yeah, I used to call everything a hot rod. I used to call my drift car a hot rod,
I mean, it wouldn't have been accepted as that at that time, but I would argue, now you could call it a hot rod, and I would say, like our kids' generation, that is their dad's hot rod.
Yeah.
Right? Like me building whatever, a G35, if I LS swap that is now a hot rod to my kid, right? I just think that is a term that gets handed down from generation to generation, and the vehicles themselves change.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure there's a lot of purists that are like pulling their hair out right now, but and then in my mind, that becomes a restoration. That's different.
I think that there is at some point, people got really stodgy and clutching their pearls in the 80s. They were like, here's how you build hot rods. They were like, this is the tried and true recipe for a small block Chevy, and you put it in your Camaro, which I think is crazy because just what you're saying is the absolute truth. Like, if you go back and look at the magazines from the 50s, it's like how to put an Oldsmobile in your T-bucket. It's like, whatever motors work and rip. Cadillac made giant V8s. Let's cram them in the smallest car we can find.
Exactly.
That was it. And then at some point, they closed the books on being creative, and they were like, here's what you do. And that's when I think a lot of young people got turned off, 90s, whenever. But I believe that almost none of that applies anymore. I think everybody that's like, elder millennials on down doesn't care. They all grew up liking Skylines and Camaros and, Aston Martins or whatever it is. And they're very much more open to all sorts of different cars. I see so many people now, they're like, I have a G35 and I have a 75 Camaro and I have a, whatever. And
New
you're like,
Fed or something.
Cool.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I have a C5 because everybody has a C5 because you're like, they're so good. Because it's the best bang for the buck ever. But totally. I think people care much less, and I think that's awesome.
A lot of it's the rotation of like, car's brand new, so rich dude buys it. I look at like the life of a BMW as like a great example of that, just because like expensive, lawyer buys it, gets handed down to the son, becomes, a hoon car, drift car, something like that. And now even, like an E30.
Try to get it back.
Yeah, exactly. E30s are expensive again, whereas you couldn't give them away. The Fox Body's the next best example.
For sure.
These were $300 cars at one
Absolutely.
point. And now they're $8, $9, $10, $15, $20,000
I paid like
cars.
$3,500 for a roller that's not great with no wiring.
Right.
And no
Whereas,
seats.
which
is crazy. Back in the day, that was a nice driving Fox Body was $3,500.
Yeah. And at one point, I remember seeing not even rollers, like running, but maybe with a knock for $500.
It's crazy. I'm not surprised, and you're totally right. It's wild. I think there is a sect of cars that once you dip to a certain price point, like you can't buy a GS300 anymore.
Right.
They're all destroyed.
Right.
Because they got too cheap and they had a little too much status.
Yeah.
And then like everybody wanted them, every like punk kid and everybody like, they're great cars, but like they just got chewed up and spit out. And
but then it comes full circle again where...
I want one. Like I want an Aristo
exactly.
or like whatever, but...
And you'll pay good money and then you'll restore it. You're not going to engine swap it. You're like... maybe resto mod it and be like, okay, I'm going to put decent coilovers on it because this thing handles like a boat stock, and that would be a crime to drive it that way.
But I just think like LS400s, find me a nice one.
Right?
Find me one that hasn't been like hammered in and then hammered out and then the seats are trash. It's it's tough. And that's what the Beamers do. When the Beamers, when the E36s got that cheap, they're all garbage.
They were $500 at one point.
Yeah, they get destroyed.
And now they're coming. S13 is a great example.
Crazy.
Rollers are $9,000-$10,000.
Yep.
Right, for a car that you guys literally would crumple up and throw away. Yeah. I remember when I first started drifting in Canada, because our import laws were only 15 instead of 25 years. The majority of the cars in the track were R32s. Because we could get them flown over, we could get them shipped over for $6,000-$7,000.
That's awesome.
Right. And now an R32 in decent shape is $15,000-$20,000.
Oh, yeah. And that's GTR is 45.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I remember guys drifting R32 GTRs.
We did a lot of stuff in Canada early on.
Yeah,
and we judged some of that stuff. And I was like, oh, man, there's all these awesome Sephiros. And and Skylines and stuff we couldn't even dream about.
And some of them made their way into the States.
A little bit, yeah.
Hey, I'm down in Florida now.
It
Man.
felt
I
like
see it all the
mostly
time.
to like the Seattle area, but yeah, some came down.
Well, they come in through Vancouver, right? And then they would just, end up in a trailer. And next
Yeah.
thing you know, it's in Seattle, or they would come in through Windsor and then down through Detroit, and then Florida's crazy loose regulations
Yeah, that
and
makes sense.
Arizona and stuff like that. But yeah, it's interesting to look at like what will become the next modern classic. So it's very easy to look at everything now and be like, oh shit. And we said the same thing in the 90s. We said the same thing in the early 2000s.
What stabs me in the absolute heart is I was like, I'll always be able to buy a nice FC for like $8,000.
Not anymore, dude.
Yeah, dude. I just bought one, but I was like, I have to get one now before it's $50,000. Yeah, I was always like, FCs will never be it. FD, sure.
Right.
FCs, they came non-turbo, they came 4-lug. Nobody cares about. And then I was like, oh, they're $30,000.
Yeah,
like
for a
I
clean
don't.
one.
What
Yeah.
happened?
Nostalgia happened,
NSXs
dude.
were $21,000
Yeah.
like 12, 15 years ago, and now they're 90.
Yeah, it's. Mark IV Supra, another one.
Forget it. Forget
that's a rich man's game at this
Well,
point.
that never dipped either.
No,
a nice
no,
turbo
no.
never dipped.
No.
Nice turbo was never less than like $50,000.
Right. Yeah, it's weird the ones that hold their value. An FD, an R30. R34 is different because they never really
Yeah.
came over. But yeah, those three. You throw the NSX
Nuts.
in there. Yeah.
Yeah, the best Japanese supercar value is not even close. Z32.
Really?
Oh my god.
Yeah.
People, they were like the stablemate of the Super Turbo and the FD, and
Yeah.
they also won like every car and driver comparo every
good point.
time.
Yeah.
And they got this weird reputation because they're hard to work on, but guess what? All cars are.
think- yeah.
That was it. They were like, forget it. It looks awesome. They drive incredible. It's wicked.
Just a pain in the ass to get anything in the engine.
Fine.
bay.
Just take the motor out.
Yeah. If you got to do turbo seals, the whole engine
Just
just
take
comes
it
out.
out, yeah.
Just take it out. Yeah. You got really good at taking the hood off.
I mean, look, people talk about 911s like it's the greatest thing that ever happened. You take the
Right.
motor out for everything.
Yeah, that's a good point. Spark plugs.
Yeah, just,
oil
just
change.
take it out. Just drop it down.
FC. So, obviously, tight connection to that car. I couldn't find any vehicle that you started drifting in before that. Everything we talked about. I don't know if there was a car that you were sliding around before that car, but that seems to be what kicked off. And I would argue potentially kicked off a lot of drifting, at least East Coast.
Yeah.
You could argue West Coast. I haven't got the timeline completely dialed. There's a lot. It's interesting. There's a lot of shit that happened on
the
both
same
coasts
time.
at the
At the
same
same
time,
time, yeah.
with different people. But I think inarguably East Coast FCRX7s, you and Forsberg, kicking things off. Funny enough, Forsberg was more of a sound guy at that time.
That was really early. I was the very, very first thing I did that was basically it went like this. I was a hot rod kid. I went to college. I got kicked out. My parents came home and they were like, you need to buy something just to get to community college. My mom was a teacher there and I could go for free. I bought an 86 GTI,
Okay.
8-valve, right? 5-speed, fuel injected, 4-wheel discs.
Yeah.
I thought it was
Great car.
I thought it was a space shuttle.
Still is a good car.
Compared to my Demon, it was like the space shuttle.
Right.
And I was like, this thing handles sick. I'm having a blast. I was like never under 5,000 RPM. It was like pedal, floored, whatever. Learning how to drive quickly around turns, on PA back roads. Barely going to class. That's a theme you'll probably hear over and over.
I did look through your high school record.
That's fair.
Yeah. Good thing that your high school had like a north and east, a south, a west. Yeah. You tried kind of all the angles.
I changed high schools every year, but we'll talk. Anyway, so basically, I was driving my GTI around, and then I was driving by and I saw a bunch of 944 turbos outside of a shop in Warminster, Pennsylvania, and that was like seeing a unicorn. Like these things didn't exist. So I saw it. I went in. I was like, I have to be on you guys. Like I have to be here every day. Like I'm gonna be.
You're gonna hang around.
And I was like 18. I was like, I need this. And they were like, okay, whatever. And I was like, I'll sweep the floor like for free. I don't care. I just want to be around this and racing and whatever. And they were like, okay, cool. And then eventually they like hired me and I built a couple Volkswagens that they didn't want to build. And then we got into 944 stuff. And I was just learning a ton from these lunatic dudes. Like this dude, James Forcellini, who has passed, but could really drive. Took me in a 944 sideways in fourth gear around an industrial park. And I was like, I didn't know you could do that. I didn't even know that was a thing. So they let me autocross a 944 that was like boosted up 350 horse with suspension and stuff. And I was like an 18 or 19-year-old and I did all right.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is the greatest. This is it. And he knew. He was like, we stuck the needle in. Like, that was what he said. That was his term. He was the best.
No,
he was like skinny, always wore leather, only dated strippers.
Got
like
it.
Anthony Bourdain, but for cars.
Right.
Full rock and roll. Came out of New York City, lunatic, but like could really drive and really knew cars in and out. And looking back in it now, he was like 29 when I met him. Like, he seemed like 100.
Yeah, of course. Lives all these lives, right?
Right. So then I drove this 944. I was getting ready to go to school, back to school or something. And I was like, I can't afford it. What's like a 944 I can buy? And I found an RX-7 turbo.
That's close.
Yeah. Well, my buddy had a super turbo and we put like a drain pipe, sewer pipe, 3-inch catback on it. And while my buddies had Hondas and Volkswagens, and we had spent a bunch of money on them, and they did nothing. There was like no discernible power gain. We put a fish tank boost valve and a 3-inch exhaust in my buddy's 3rd-gen Supra, and we're like, oh my God, it's fast now.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, turbo, rear-wheel drive. I love the 944. What's out there? I didn't even know what a rotary engine was. And I bought my first FC, and it was It was the best. I drove to North Carolina. I bought it for $1,500, $1,700.
Yeah.
And later on, I sent the guy another $500 for like an F-Con that didn't do anything, like Gen 1 F-Con, HKS F-Con. And I drove it, and it handled incredible, and I had a blast in it. I spent all summer just sliding it around Doylestown, Pennsylvania. I hadn't met Forsberg yet, but I made like I had like built up a reputation in this car.
Yeah.
That I was just this kid who was like just out there raising hell in this FC all the time, and that it was faster than it should be, and we were like attacking the back roads real gnarly and sliding it around all the time. And then eventually I wrapped it around a telephone pole real hard. Like I had a spare tire in the back, and I was like I was a caddy at the time. Me and my buddy were caddies for money because the money was awesome.
Yeah.
It was just walking around with golf clubs. So I had a spare tire on the outside, and I like slid this thing around, and I put it like dead center between a telephone pole. So hard that you could stand between the headlights. But we weren't hurt. I'm pretty sure we weren't wearing seatbelts. We were like 18, 19. We didn't feel pain.
Yeah, of course. You do now, though.
Now, for sure. I would be dead.
Your knees now,
I'd be dead. Yeah. They dropped it on my mom's driveway. She came home. She thought I was dead. She screamed. And it sat there until one of my buddies, Eric Forsberg, was like, my brother Chris needs a water pump in his DB like blaster blazer. Can you do that? And I was like, I'm sure we can put a water pump on something.
Yeah.
So we put a water pump on a 4.3 or a 2.8 or whatever was in there and fixed his thing. And then he sold it. And Eric had an Eclipse, Chris's older brother, who was just here like 2 days ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I have some of his wine. I'll give you some of his wine. He works at a winery.
Right. I did know that.
Yeah. And again, we had like probably built an outsized reputation with how gnarly this car was because it would have run like a 13 maybe. But it was, we really went hard with it. And we were just like I was like ripping and sliding it around all over. So it had this like pretty gnarly reputation in my town. So when he was like, Chris is going to get a sports car, I just told him to get an RX-7.
Right.
So he did. And then we became buddies. He bought whatever hot parts on my car, I sold to him. That we could salvage out of it.
Right.
He bought like a 40,000 mile 10th anniversary black, like leather.
Damn.
Incredible.
Yeah, that's a retirement car now.
It was incredible. And then we immediately tore it to shreds, like threw the interior in the garbage. Like it was nuts. So and then we were off to the races. So then basically I bought another crashed FC, or I bought a clean roller, like a 4-lug car, and I put all my stuff in it.
Okay.
And then we were kind of off to running. And then as we got building our cars faster and am I going too long? Is this?
No, you're good. We got time,
right,
buddy. No, I want to know all the details.
So this is how it started. This is how drifting. This is how we got into drifting. So then Chris had an RX-7. I had an RX-7. We couldn't find anyone on the East Coast that was doing anything except building Civics and DSMs.
Yeah.
And like maybe Supras, but like rotaries, no. So we just started scouring the internet. We found this guy, Paul Coe, on his GeoCities site. He had a step-by-step how to make your car run like 12s for no money.
Okay.
So Chris bought a ported motor that had blown seals, and we just learned how to rebuild it.
Yeah.
And then I became the engine guy. Chris became sort of the fab guy, and I started hand porting rotaries, and we street ported a bunch. I street ported a bunch of them, and I'd build the motors. we all kind of, like, it was just a bunch of idiot kids.
Yeah.
A billion miles from anywhere in his mom's horse barn.
Right. Third floor.
Yeah. For years until we eventually got up the money to concrete
the whole
it.
thing. Yeah.
But like never heat, never lift, never anything.
Cardboard box for P-ports and stuff like that.
Rotors everywhere. We blow stuff up because they're rotaries. But like he would spend a bunch of money. He'd get all the new everything. Yeah. And I would just use used garbage. I'd be like, oh, this Apex seal looks all right. I'd scuff it up, shove it in, and make it. My car would always be just as fast.
It's the tub of Vaseline to get the seals
garbage.
in. Yeah.
So we started doing that. But basically, we followed this recipe Paul Coe did. And I don't know if you want to do it now, but at the time, it was insane. It was like full exhaust. If I get a front mount, little street port, and figure out a TO4, which we would get like, nobody knew anything about anything. TO4Bs, E's. Right. I got one that was supposed to go on a Harley once with like a weird European like turbine inlet, like whatever. Okay. You buy an HKS, what was it, carparts.com? Some random car part. For $240, you get an HKS cast manifold with a TO4 on it, and you could bolt a Delta gate to the side of it. So we did that, and then the real hiccup was how to get more fuel in it.
Right.
So I would build fuel. I would wire up. I like built on a circuit board fuel cut dispensers. Okay. So like an adjustable limiting circuit.
Yeah. Yeah. I know exactly what you mean.
So I did that in these little boxes, and we would hook them up. And then you just needed to bring in more fuel after. So this dude had figured out that HKS AICs, the additional injector controllers, they worked off of RPM and boost. And you could tune them like incredibly well. Like I would just tune them with our butts, like rotaries, and we would just like
because it just have a potentiometer.
I had 4 knobs on it. It'd be like when it comes in and then angle it comes in. Like what is the offset and what is the rate of change?
Right. This would be like 2001, 2002.
Yeah. Oh, dude, I found this week. This was like 2000 pre 9/11.
Okay.
I found a bunch of pictures of a dyno day we went to in the Bronx pre 9/11 with Chris's car.
Okay.
I have that are wild.
So we're 99, 2000.
No, I think we're like 2 days. It's like either like summer of 2001.
Okay. Cool.
And it was just 4 knobs, and I would tune it. And I'd be like, oh, your car feels a little flat. I would take a little fuel out. Like, you could just do that.
Yeah.
And they ran sick. And Chris's car put down 320 wheel like that.
We're so jaded now by numbers.
But that
like
was
back then,
psychotic.
Jesus.
That was insane. In fact, my dad, who was here, I had my car doing about the same thing. I had, like I said, I had a TO4B. He had an E. He had like a money for a Spirko intercooler. I used like a 944 turbo that I found laying around.
Right.
I had like a pool handle, like a cut off a pool ladder for a charge pipe. Whatever we did, I had to do it. We did it. But these were like low 12-second cars at this point. Yeah. Maybe 12.0.
Yeah.
So I took my dad out. First off, the first thing that happened was we'd been working on it, and I think parents just go like, "What are these idiots doing?"
Yeah.
I see sparks coming. Oh, they got a welder. Oh, like they're doing that.
Probably check in.
They're getting pretty loud,
fingers,
whatever, right? They check in, and then one day I lived only a mile and a half from Chris, and it was a back road, and so for like 600 yards, it was a main road. He just basically went to the end of his road, 600 yards of a main road. I would go, and then back road's to my house. So I get on the main road, and I'm like, full wastegate open, chirping, blazing through second gear, tires spinning. And you could hear it a mile away, easily, miles away. And his dad was like, what are you guys doing to these? That was it. That was, I think, the wake-up call of like, what are you guys doing to these cars? And then I took my dad out, which he's gruff and no fun.
I just met him. He's a great guy.
Yeah. He's softened up a bit.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, for sure. I took him out in my car, and I remember being like, this thing's sick. He's going to love it. And I ripped it up the road. First gear, second gear, just melting tires and making 400 horsepower. And he's done. And I knew he was blown away, but he just went, what's your goal with this?
Why?
Why? And I was like, are you kidding? This is the greatest thing ever. Look what I did.
Yeah. For no reason.
For no reason other than I think I can.
Yeah.
So that is how, then we got into drifting because Chris's dad was traveling and working in Singapore and Asia a ton.
Okay.
And again, nobody in America was messing with these cars. We found Hawaiian dudes that had built, Paul Coe was in Hawaii.
Yep.
He'd done the Turbo 2 stuff. And we would get our cars sometimes tuned by Puerto Rican dudes in New York because Puerto Rican dudes and rotaries are the best. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I drive a Mazda Protege for
Yeah,
a daily,
yeah.
and everybody's like, "You bought that off Puerto Rican guy, didn't you?" And I'm like,
Listen, I'm not
yeah.
saying it's not a racist thing.
No,
Puerto
it's
Rican, rotaries are huge in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
It's wildness.
Yeah.
So when we wanted to get cars tuned, guys would be like, "Oh, just talk to this dude and that
Yeah, I
dude."
got
So
a guy
we
who's
would go
been doing these since day one.
forever. They're the only guys building these cars like you guys are.
Yeah.
But way not. They had been insane forever. So they would sometimes they would tune our cars. If we got a Haltech or something, that we would go find a guy in the Bronx
You
to tune it.
Sprint 1500.
Yeah, not even. No,
Oh, no.
E6K, bro.
Oh, shit.
DOS
Okay,
based. E6K with just 2D bars.
Yeah.
It looked like an equalizer. They were like, "You're
man.
good."
Yeah.
And so then Chris's dad started bringing back. We just wanted to make our cars faster. We couldn't get any parts besides like motor stuff. We had been buying some stuff of EJ Japan, and Chris's dad started bringing back option magazines.
Okay.
And-
I was
and-
curious how you got your hands on those.
And we were like, "Oh, cool!" And at the same time, my buddy Colin, who was this total goofball anime kid, was like, "You guys got to look at this initial
D.
thing.
Yeah.
They have your car." He had a Prelude. He was super into it.
Ah, okay.
So he was like, "You got to see this initial D thing." And this is before, I'm telling you, they were coming out in real time.
Mm-hmm.
His buddy in Japan would rip them on Real Player, and we'd watch them at like 320-bit resolution, like tiny.
Oh,
and we
man.
would just make up the stories. It was full Japanese,
Yeah.
nothing.
You just tried to
Just
figure it out.
we didn't. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's not a story-driven
It's not
show,
really. No,
Yeah.
you can tell. His
You can
boxes in
tell.
the back,
That
he's
guy's
trying to-
cool.
yeah.
Yeah, these guys look mean. They have money. He
Yeah, he's got
doesn't.
spiky
Yeah.
hair, so he's got to be, yeah.
So it was between like option magazines and Initial D, and that was it. We were off and running. We were like, let's just build drift cars. We'd been like BMX kids and come from skateboarding, or Chris came from like rollerblading, and we were like, this feels
I
reckless
didn't know
and
he was a
fun.
rollerblader.
Oh yeah. Did I let the cat out of the
No,
bag?
you're so okay.
Yeah.
So that's how I started. I
Yeah.
was never so. I'm gonna have to bring that up to him. That might be like the next episode he's on. That's
Yeah.
good. Damn. All right, that makes sense. He's lanky.
He is
like,
lanky.
Yeah, it
and
makes
super
sense.
coordinated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always the lanky thin guys,
Yeah.
which I am not built to be. I was built to be a BMXer. I just never got
Same.
into
Yeah.
it.
I was
Yeah.
on the
Stocky.
bike. Yeah.
Coast a lot.
Yeah. A lot of power.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so that was it. We started my first car, I had my FC, and we were like, oh, people can drive these. Like, they're awesome. I already knew. I was already just naturally sliding it around.
Yeah.
I'd slid around like a couple cars. I had like an 83 Thunderbird. I would slide around turns
Okay.
as like a high schooler.
Yeah.
Because it's a Fox body. It was like a V6, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
I remember I just would push it coming out of turns and realize I could like slide them out a little bit. And one time I was on Bristol. I was making a right. I could like see, this is like a lot. When we grew up, it's super built up now, but it's all open farm stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see for a mile in each direction, like nobody's coming. So I come in as hot as I can, and I'm like in second, and I punch it, and I like rip it, And there were these older kids who were always at this house, like on like GSXRs and like
Right.
whatever. And they saw me, and they were like screaming and whatever. So I was like, oh, people liked it. This is cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, it feels pretty cool. So that's how we started. Basically, Chris's dad brought over option magazines, dude, and like
Yeah.
Car Boys and whatever else they had. And we started then just being like, oh, let's go from like kind of street racing these RX-7s and like just drifting, mountain driving.
Now is that I'm little confused on the timeline of exactly Drift Alliance, because I know you kind of spearheaded it, being like, okay, there like skate teams and stuff like that were kind of a big thing at the time.
Yeah.
Did that begin at that point, or is that kind
No,
of once
that's later.
Vaughn had started to come in and a little bit later on, like, or D1 driver search? Like, where does that fit in the timeline of everything?
So when like we started being like me and Chris and our PA buddies,
Yeah.
we're kind of like, we're doing drifting. We kind of did like street drifting stuff for like a year maybe.
Right.
Then we met Matt Petty
Okay.
and the Jersey kids. And it's like seeing a pink elephant walk down the road. We're like, Matt Petty had a top secret jacket. He'd been
Right.
to Japan. We're like, holy
Yeah.
shit, dude. We're
He's
like,
the
this
coolest
kid's
guy.
the coolest kid ever.
Arguably still maybe the
Yeah,
coolest
he's
guy.
a ripper. Yeah, still. But I was like, yo, and also like a regular kid from the suburbs who like listens to the same like indie rock music we do and comes from skateboarding. We're like, oh, we love this kid. Like, this
Yeah.
is it. We're thick
Fits.
as thieves immediately. And he loves drifting and wants to do drifting. So he's like, we're going to start drift events. And we're like, you're going to what? Now we're like, okay, well, I'm all in.
Yeah.
So then I'm a little bit more of like, whatever. I just like, I'm down. I'll talk to whoever. Let's do it. And then Petty and I linked up and just started. We went right to E-Town and like kind of pitched it.
Now it's to the Naps at the time. And
Yeah, to Mike Knapp, who had just taken over.
Right. And the timing just worked out. And then that's where I guess that culture started to to build. And then, I mean, it seemed like it took maybe 2 years before it really kicked off, although there was early momentum even within the first couple of events.
Oh, yeah. It was,
Yeah.
so we basically went as two 20-year-old idiot kids with no business understanding or anything. And went to Mike Knapp. But again, it was just happened to be a guy who was like basically our age at this point. And his dad had passed, and he was kind of running the show there with his cousins. And we walked in, and we're like, we had like an option, like VHS or something stupid.
Sit down. Let's put this in.
Yeah, we're like, check this out. And he goes like, yeah, cool, let's do it. It was the wildest.
Damn.
It was like, sometimes I've been in a couple moments where my life has changed, and I was like, oh, you can just do this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always had that kind of like, that was it. He was like, we come with like insurance plans and like how we were going to do all this stuff. And he goes, listen, he was like, forget all that. He's like, just show up with kids. Let's do 10 events the first year.
Yeah.
I'll give you X out of the gate, my insurance, my whatever. Let's do it. Let's see what happens. And that was it. It was, we left, we like were squealing, you know what I mean? Like in the parking lot. I actually just talked about it. I saw him at East Coast Bash like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
We were just having this conversation, like so fun. He was all in, such a good dude. And like, just let us, like, when I think about being in that mindset and being like, yeah, that'll work. Or like, I'm interested, like it's so random. These white kids from the suburbs come in and they're like, we're going to do this thing nobody does in America.
Yeah.
It's called drifting. And he was like, looks cool. I'm in. Let's do it. You know, like, I think that's fun.
That stuff still happens though.
Oh.
Like I think people get so caught up in like, oh, I can't have it. It'll never, like they give up well before they ever have the
for
shot.
sure.
And it's like to have the boldful ignorance of a
Oh.
20-year-old is
The
like
best.
one of the most powerful things
Walked
you can
into
have.
this giant boardroom they have there,
Right.
and sat down. I was like,
This is what we want to do.
yeah. And he was like, let's do it. So then
Cut
the
off
first
sleeves.
event, for sure, probably dressed like an idiot. The first event, like 35 cars showed up.
Yeah.
We were like, we felt like, oh, wow, kids from all over.
You kind of figured it was just going to be like the
Maybe
6.
10.
Yeah.
Like we did some moves. Like we did a couple, like I was kind of that entrepreneurial spirit a little bit. Like we
Right.
did a couple things where we like tried to get the word out on different, forums were huge. So we made a plan. We were like, we're actionable, like crazy.
Damn.
Like even when we were, Chris and I had that like little shop at his mom's house. We like Fast and Furious 1 came out. We made like 3,000 flyers and put them on like every car at the theater to see Fast and Furious.
Oh, that's smart.
We were like, do you want to make your car sick? Call us. We'll come to the late shift
dude,
engineer.
that's
Boom, boom,
so
boom, boom,
smart.
boom. So we did, that was like my idea, and we did it, and a million kids were like, yo, who like got turned on and then walked out to their car and they saw this flyer from these kids.
Yeah.
Who were hooking up cars
That's
in a barn. So then same kind of thing, like we made a plan. We like were so business. We were like, somebody hit Fresh Alloy, who's gonna do Zilvia? Like boom, 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 boom. Get on all these different forums and just tell people like it's happening, drifting's here in America, like we're gonna do it. And then it was a little bit of cutting teeth, but we went to the Spectrum. I think that we stole like 7,000 cones with like Chris's dad's S10 because we didn't have any cones.
Of course.
We just went and like, so in the first videos, if you ever watch, we're driving and they're like proper traffic. They're not like racing.
No, they're big.
They're big traffic cones. So we went out and liberated those cones, like a whole truckload. And then they're still at E-Town. They still use them for stuff. But yeah, we did that. We didn't know how to set up courses. So we went in for a test day, which we made. That's like our first drifting video ever. I had my white FC. Chris had his car. And then a couple buddies had SR swapped cars that we had built. And then, the first day, kids came from all over. I don't know if Turk was at the first one, but he was very early on. Vaughn came up very early. So it was kids from Maryland, New Hampshire, PA, New York, all over. And then we were just like, dude, it was very cool because we were this like complete independent microcosm. Like we didn't have the guys in the West Coast. I give them full on credit, like Moto, Club 4AG. It was very similar. They might have been a year ahead of us. I don't know the timeline either. I'm not super worried about it either way. But they were so connected to Japan.
Right.
A lot of Japanese dudes, they could speak the language. They had drivers coming over. Here's how you set up a car. Here's how you enter a turn. And we were like, we'll figure it out. We'll just do it. Like Petty worked at a place called A1 that did circle track stuff. And they just started making 4-link kits for Corollas. They were like, we could make those.
Yeah.
They're like, what is that, 14 millimeter? That's a 9/16, man. We can make that. We can make that work. And they, boom, no time. So we were like just doing whatever. And it was about like, we built, it's very DIY vibe on our side. But I think it really benefited us. I think we came up kind of with a more American drift style and stuff like that. But that's sort of the timeline. I think by 02, we'd done a couple of test days, and 03, we ran the whole year.
Yeah. It is funny the comparison between the East Coast and West Coast, because like it's still almost predominant. I mean, drifting now in the US is so homologated in a lot of ways, but you can still kind of tell the guys that grew up in the West Coast and the East Coast scene. And I think some of it comes from East Coast, depending on the area, but only getting a few good months to drive. And the rest is in the winter. It's in shitty roads, and you learn how to drive in the snow.
Yeah.
You're going to kick everybody's got pickup trucks because you have to. You kind of start in that. And then once the pavement comes, you still carry a lot of those similar traits in pavement drifting. Whereas, West Coast guys, a lot of them driving all season.
Oh, yeah.
More access to Japanese parts, more access to people to build
More
and tune
events,
cars.
yeah.
Yeah,
They were
events all
choosing between like the speed trial events and the Club 4AG stuff and Button Willow and like Cali Speedway and all these, they just they had more.
And then, Irwindale kicks off and then that just explodes everything. Whereas you guys are really, really not stuck, but like that was it. E-Town was it.
Parking lot at E-Town. That was it.
That was, before road course,
Everything,
before, the figure eight that we've got now, like that was it. It was like just this giant spot to set up cones, and I would say bang doors, but I feel like the tandem wasn't as close back then.
No.
Like if you were within like a couple of feet, you're like, holy shit, what did I just do?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so how did you get into D1 then from there? Do you remember how you heard about it or kind of figured out like
so
we're
we
going to
had
drive?
kind of connected by the end of the first season, and also Signal came out at one point, which again was the best.
Yeah.
Because we had to meet Karoy, who was a lunatic. What a good driver, so gnarly, and was sick. But like we saw they brought their cars, they saw us drive. We got to party with those dudes were animals.
Yeah.
Like really we were like, oh, these guys, it was weird. It felt to me like this. Japanese guys feel like East Coast guys. Like that was it. We were like, oh, these guys are rowdy and fun. And we took them to like sorority parties. Like we went out getting wild. Like, we had some pretty wild times with those dudes in Jersey. But they could really drive. Like we saw real driving at that point. And Karoy was a beast, dude. So good and so aggressive.
Yeah.
Rest in peace. Awesome. What an awesome dude. And also a tank. Like physically.
Just a big dude.
I arm wrestle. So at the point you were asking about Drift Alliance, we repped a club I came up with called Aces High for the first year, which we ran was like 8 then 10 dudes. I made these like cool stickers and we put them on your car. Me and Matt Petty would walk around with a briefcase, like a metal briefcase. We were such cornballs. But like the kids were stoked. We'd be like, you're one of us now.
Oh, okay.
Like Aces High for me, again, like just like, first off, Iron Maiden rips.
Right.
But like I was like, oh, it's like Americans versus like Japanese dudes or like World War II vibes. Like that was what I felt.
Got it. Okay.
And then the Signal guys came over. It's in the video, but I was like, put our sticker on your car. And they were like, no. And Corey was like, if you can beat me in arm wrestling, I'll do it.
Yeah, I've heard you're quite a good arm wrestler.
I beat him, but he was strong. He was terrifying. I was, pretty rowdy kid, but they did a anatomy of a D1 driver. There's a weird video from like 2006, 7.
Okay.
Karoy crushes an apple with his hands. Like they were like, it's Karoy. Who can lift him up? Karoy can. Oh, who can do? Yeah, he can. He's the strongest dude by it. Yeah, it's sick. They're like, how much does everybody weigh? Like, how high can they jump? How fast are they? And they were like, who's the strongest? And it was like, just Karoy's the strongest dude by a lot. So they put the stickers on their cars.
Yeah, the arm wrestling thing, when asking people about you, arm wrestling actually came up quite a few times. You were a big fan of arm wrestling. Pretty much anybody who would let you, and a few that didn't. So
yeah, maybe I don't know.
It was
For sure.
Yeah,
yeah. I realized I was pretty good at it pretty early on.
It's not the technique, is what
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the stocky leverage helps too.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's the quick twitch too. I think the quick muscle helps. You just grab it. Yeah.
As soon as
they don't see it coming. But yeah, we had those when they came out. We were repping this Aces High Club, and then sort of towards the end of the year, we started doing Hyperfest. We heard about the D1 search, and I realized I kind of saw. I was like, some of us are going to really try to make this thing happen.
Right.
We should kind of band together.
Yeah.
And then I was like, we should do this. I forget where I was. We were at a party or something, and I was like, we should do Drift Alliance. And then Chris and I were just thick as thieves. I was like, me and Chris are Drift Alliance. And then Vaughn, who says he founded it, but he didn't, came in late, like not much later, but like a couple of weeks later, somewhere. Like Vaughn, obviously, because he was so driven, as he still is, I'm sure, was like, yeah, I'm in. And then it basically just became like, look, we're just better together. We just have to stick together. It's sort of us against the world.
And it seemed like too Vaughn had a really good business sense to add into all that as well.
For
like
sure.
That started really
We're
early.
like, hey, Dad, like, what? Can we afford to do this?
Yeah.
He's like, we're going on this trip, like, whatever. And it was just like, Vaughn
Figured it out.
handled
This is
it.
where we're going. This is where we're stopping.
Yeah. Here's how much we're getting paid. We're going to spend it all on.
Meanwhile, you
OZL.
and Chris are using grocery store loading docks to get cars into rider
Yes,
trucks. And
for sure.
Yeah, Vaughn's like, okay, this is how much it's going to cost, though.
Yeah, well, he had a job and stuff at the time.
He was IT for like Microsoft or something.
But he was IT for years. Like,
Yeah.
he was like eventually transitioned out of it. But yeah, he had been like an IT guy. Well, he was he had to make it on his own, and he had already kind of done that.
Yeah.
So he was a no-brainer choice. And then Turk, like kind of younger, a little younger than us.
Yeah.
Very quickly. Well, actually, no. Turk was like another 2 years, maybe.
Okay. 2 years out. Yeah. I knew he was a little bit later.
Because it was Alex Pfeiffer
Yep.
and Ryan Hampton.
Yep.
It was the five of us for a minute.
Yeah. And then, Turk's entry was kind of like post motocross.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he was still doing some moto at the time, but had a couple of bad crashes and was like, I got to kind of find something that's not this.
Yeah.
So, with age comes a cage, even though that was pretty early on. But from what I hear, he had a couple of real nasty wrecks early on. So
yeah, one of his feet doesn't work really. It's like it's like
he's got like
together.
half a dead foot or something. Yeah.
Yeah. But he came in 06 maybe.
Okay.
Yeah. 05. I mean, we knew he was like, we were on the Falcon team and he wasn't. That's the only reason I can tell. Like, I remember when he came in right around 06 with his red car.
Right.
And started driving, and we were like, well, we know this kid.
And then you guys had the Falcon
Chicago,
stuff.
I think his first event was, I think, in 06.
Maybe. Yeah, you're stretching my knowledge on that one. Yeah. I can go back and look. I don't know if you've been on Drift Stats. There is a website that has every event since the inception of FD, and all the stats are there.
That's crazy.
So, yeah, I have your complete record of
that's cool.
of driving, which was pretty sick. Like even the hiatus that's in there when you kind of switch teams and jumped over to FD staff. But, going back to D1 though, like you and a handful of other drivers, first Americans, do basically, competing and doing well and driving well and more or less winning the D1 driver search, but like putting the US on the map.
Well, so the way that works, it took me and Chris 2 tries at it, but it was really, again, I give so much respect to the Club Loose guy, the Club 4AG guys. Like, we had heard, I can't explain to you the 2-year span that it was like, we're in a dirt barn.
Yeah.
Our buddies, like, reading indecipherable videos and magazines and being like, this is the coolest thing ever. And then like 2 years later, they're like, those guys are coming.
Yeah.
Do you want to become a D1 driver? It was like impossible to believe.
Yeah.
And we found out about it, and all the spots were taken, like gone. But Naoki was like, I'll give you my spot, and I'll give Chris, you and Chris can have me and my cousin's spots.
I did not know that. That
was so cool. And we were like, he was like, just like, I'm not that serious about it. I was gonna drive.
Yeah.
But if you guys want to come, and I was like forever grateful, but also it's what a cool thing to do, man.
Yeah.
He was like, if you guys can get out here, you can have my spot and my cousin's spot. And so that's what we did. Chris and I just asked our families and our friends and whatever. We were like, we need like a couple $1,000 to get this together.
Yeah.
And Chris's parents rented us a rider truck that someone had knocked the box off of. That wasn't like a 2-car or whatever. Rider was like, we have a truck missing the box. It's 30 feet long. We were like, sold.
It'll fit.
We're like, we're out there. I have some pictures of us like in our like drift flop house with our cars loaded up there, and we're like sitting on top of it. And again, same kind of thing. Like, we were just kids. We were like, who thought we could immediately drive? I'd never been west of Colorado, and I went there once on like a school trip. And my parents were like, okay, good luck or whatever, doing this thing we don't really know anything about and have never really been to the events for. But like, that sounds cool.
You drive to the West Coast and compete against Japanese people you read about in magazines.
Yeah, so we did that, and it didn't go great for us. We just didn't. Chris drove pretty well. I didn't drive great. Track was so big, and I was going like a bazillion, but I just wound up spinning at the base every time, the base of the turn. We had stock angle FCs, like morons. So, but Wired Magazine followed us out there.
Yeah.
So that wound up being more important probably anyway. So that's when they had hit up Matt Petty, this guy, Charles Graber, who wrote the story, and was like, we think this is really fucking cool. What you guys are doing and how there's like this weird Japanese sport is somehow made it to like essentially the backwoods of Pennsylvania. So he wrote an article. He came out to E-Town. He came to our drift flop house where we were like having toga parties and like being absolute wild animals. We had rented this place. We were building cars in the garage, and like, you know, our sink was full of turbochargers and whatever it was. It was a really fun time. And then he heard we were going to California. He was like, I want to come.
Yeah,
He was like, we're going to change this story and I'm going to come and follow you guys and see what happens. And he did. And then he wrote all about it. And that was this big, you know, like it was a real moment of like we were in what essentially became like, Wild Magazine was huge.
Yeah,
huge.
gigantic.
It was huge. So then they wrote this huge article on American kids going drifting, and it was the two of us. So it was a big, like it kind of put us at the forefront of this movement where like we had already kind of established ourselves as like, you know, East Coast drivers, but this was another big spotlight that like sort of raised our profiles immediately. But yeah, so that's what happened. And what came from that was we saw all these other guys in LA driving in cars with like full sponsors and driving other people's cars.
Yeah.
We didn't have one single sponsor. When I tell you like we didn't have one single sponsor on the East Coast. Nobody cared, didn't happen. We didn't know how to market or connect or anything. So we went out, we're like, we're as good as these fucks, even though we didn't do that great in that event. We were like, we're as good as these dudes. And they're all either getting paid, like they got like race suits and sponsors and whatever. So we came home and we're like, we're moving to California. And we're like, that's it, we're moving.
We're doing this.
We're doing this. But at the same time, some small shop in NorCal had offered to bring us up and, you know, kind of like put us in cars while we could like work at this shop and earn a living or whatever. But Chris immediately got his Z together. Signal had hit him up, put a deal together. Like he went first. He was like, I'm just going to go drive for Signal.
Yeah.
You know,
Makes sense.
his family got like the Z program got put together. He got a truck and he went out there. So I lived in NorCal for a little bit without him. And then I just moved down. I was like, I'm over this. Like by the first year of FD. And I just worked like on Chris's stuff for a little while. At Signal, we did the SR swap, which was super fun, like Long Beach and Torrance and whatever. So we did that. And then like I just hopped into different rides, whatever I could get throughout the year. I had my FC with the SR in it. I tried to put a little program together. And then by Irwindale, so they get into D1. What was the deal? How did Chris get in? Chris did one event I didn't do. Another. Okay. They started doing not a regular driver search, but here and there.
They did a couple of events.
They did a couple. So Chris got. I feel like they might have just given him a license. No offense.
Yeah, but he was around, and he at that point would have been sponsored and had a much newer vehicle.
Yes,
and,
I mean they were like, "You're a D1 driver."
Yeah.
But he might have gotten it. I mean, it doesn't matter. He's Chris Forsberg. He can be a D1 driver.
Forsberg gets a win.
He gets yeah. But then I had to compete, and I had hooked up with this guy Clay. And he had an S14 powered S13, and I used it for D1 driver search, and I got first place in that D1 driver search in Irwindale, and I was feeling myself. It was like early 05, and I was really feeling, or the end of 04 maybe.
Yeah.
And I was like feeling myself, and I had a bunch of good runs. And me and Kenji Yamanaka tied for first place and got our D1 licenses.
That's crazy.
And he had come from Japan to get his license here,
right?
Because that was like kind of a move to do it.
Come over to the US and do it.
Yeah.
And then this was, so at that point you were in SoCal at that point.
Yeah.
Was this like you were like couch hopping? I think you lived with Jared for a little bit as well.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
I don't honestly remember the timeline.
It's tough, man. Like, I spent a lot of time trying to map it out. I'm like, there's so much info, and admittedly, like speaking with you, Chris, Ryan, like all these different people about it, everyone has such fond memories.
Yeah.
But it seems like
it's a murky
blurry
time.
time.
Yeah, it's a pretty murky time. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so I think maybe the very first thing I did was go live on Jared's couch for like 3 months.
Okay.
And then I maybe went to NorCal. I can't remember. It might have been I was in NorCal and then I came down to Jared's in San Diego.
Yeah.
But then eventually I was like, me and Forsberg were just like, we'll just live together. He was already set up. I came in and kind of crashed. But I crashed all over for like a year. At one point, I got us thrown out of one of his apartments pretty hard, I think.
Okay.
We were just partying and being animals. I can't remember what it was, but I'm pretty sure they asked us to leave.
Yeah.
And then we all lived one summer in RX-7 Secret. Was this like online? It was sick.
Okay.
It was like a online parts retailer. Tony Ye, absolute legend, ran it out of his mom's shoe wear. They had like 1,000 square feet of parts and 50,000 square feet of shoes. But he let us. It was like a sick setup of 3. Like he had like a crazy lounge and like beds and showers. So we just lived there for a whole summer.
That's cool.
When I'd kick out of bed. I was my job. I was like I'd process orders. I'd wake up. We were like drifting on the weekends. Wake up, process orders, like in my socks and underwear, yawn, like get a coffee, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then ship stuff out. Other regular people work there too, but we were just living there. And Andy Yen would come all the time. Andy Yen would come, we'd watch DVDs, we watched like we watched all of Friends, like the whole Friends DVD set one summer, like when we weren't drifting and goofing around. But yeah, we couch flopped around for at least a couple years. Probably through 04 and pretty much all of 05, we were flopping around pretty hard.
I always like to. FD in particular had such a weird thing where it kind of blew up really quick and then had these like kind of peaks and valleys like any business does. And it seemed like the whole thing just blew up out of nowhere. And that's where I was like, okay, how did this happen? Where's everybody's lives at this point? Because it went from this like almost nothing, everybody reading about it in magazines, watching DVD, or not even DVDs, VHSs.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it was like, holy shit, we have drivers coming out of other series coming here to do this thing. We have people coming from other countries.
Yeah.
You know, all these manufacturers get involved. Mopar gets involved. Falcon gets involved. And all of that happened within 3 to 4 years.
Oh, yeah.
Which is
not even
insane.
In the first year, it was like, wow, 2 American manufacturers are here.
Right.
2 grown-ass men
4 and 5
are
transport
here.
trucks per team at
it
one
was
point.
Nuts.
But then you also had the juxtaposition of guys on open trailers and Chris like driving cars to events and other guys like driving their cars to events. Like that is such an interesting thing because a lot of the drivers that struggled early on stuck it out.
Yeah.
And the drivers who kind of had these big programs to begin
a
with
lot of them are gone.
did 3 or 4 years and then that was it.
I say that all the time, not to take anything away, but like the East Coasters lasted a long time. Pretty much all of them either left on their own terms or did at least 10 years, where a lot of the early pros out of California did a couple years.
Reese. I mean, Tanner stuck around for a fair bit, but still, like, but then you look, you've got Ryan, Vaughn, Chris still running it. And then even just the East Coast drift scene is still incredibly strong. Never really wavered.
Yeah.
But it also never, in my mind, never really picked up the same way in some cases like West Coast did.
Yeah.
And then the last 10 years, you start to look at places like Texas, had a huge thing. Florida's having a massive thing.
Yep.
And then California's in another massive peak right now. Pacific Northwest as well, like Denofa and stuff. But it's just interesting to me that the drivers I speak to that really struggled in the beginning, that kind of like gave up everything, had the longevity in the sport. Whereas drivers who had a kind of an easy ride in the beginning either went on to do something else that was nuts or just kind of faded into obscurity.
Well, older guys like Sam and Reese were more business. They were like, you know, like Reese, I love him to death. I learned a lot from him. We were actually good buddies. It was wild. Like, you know, we were such polar opposites of where we were in our lives, but we got along great. Like, you know, business, he was like, oh, I need this kind of program.
Yeah, I need this amount of money to do this.
To run this program right. Like
Right.
how I feel I can do it right and professionally. And then once that happened, he was like, all right, I'm going to go stunt drive. You know, like I'm going to go do whatever else stuff that makes sense. So
making money.
It's just a way to, you know, it's certainly a way to operate for sure. And then other people were like, well, you know, for me, by the end, I was like willing to do every job, 5 jobs, drive the truck, whatever, just to keep trying to do it because I love doing it. But certainly different. And I look at guys like, you know, a lot of the early pros that weren't, you know, like some of the Falcon guys or whoever like did it and then just kind of were like, it's not the end of the world if I'll go get a real job.
Yeah, I feel like for some people it was the thing to do at the time.
Yeah.
Whereas for other people it was like, this is my life.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And that really is the difference. And both things are necessary, because those drivers that were like the thing to do it at the time, they brought in a lot of money, they brought in a lot of cool shit.
Yeah.
And kind of showed everybody else like, hey, this sport could be like this.
Oh yeah.
And for you guys, it was like, I don't care. I just want to drive.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to sell everything. I'll run obscene amounts of debt. I'll
live
do whatever.
in garages,
Yeah.
sleep in garage. Yeah, we did whatever.
But that core is what's needed to keep the longevity in the sport.
I think
And we
so.
still have it. We still have drivers like that even today. And we have the opposite. We have drivers who have the money that have come in, and, you know, whether or not they'll stay, who knows?
Yeah.
It just depends on what their true love for the sport is. But I think once you've given something up to get to that point, you're so much more committed than if you just showed up and didn't have to sacrifice for
Yeah.
it.
I think it's probably true.
So yeah, I don't know. It's just an interesting time. Admittedly, my knowledge base of the sport is really deep in the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I came in. That's when I really understand it. So like, I caught kind of the tail end of your career. So for me, you were like, if I can talk you up for a minute, this like kind of obscure figure of like, started things off, developed a lot of what FD is even today when it comes to judging, especially rule books, stuff like that. Tail end of the career was just kind of like not super successful, but you were already had one foot into getting into doing television stuff. So for me, learning about the first 10 years of that and figuring out like, you know, you did whatever it was, 5-6 years of driving, really pushed that. And then you're like, there's some serious flaws in this sport. And no one else is paying it. Everyone's bitching about it, but no one's fucking doing anything about it. And that's how I feel about that situation. And you're like, no one's, okay, cool. I'm just going to fucking deal with it.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like.
This is kind of, I mean, in a quick, whatever, to sort of a quick overview, but you're kind of right. Basically, it was like this. The first 3 years, like I was partying way too much, and I loved it, and I really wanted to do well, but I thought I was taking it seriously, but I just wasn't. You know, I'd thrown up all these roadblocks, I burned all these bridges, I had like pissed off all sorts of people, and then I'd sort of bore the responsibility of that. I kind of got knocked down a couple of pegs, but I really wanted to keep driving. Like I love driving, I love drifting, and I thought, you know, I was like, I really want to I want to be the best driver I can be, and really put that out there and do well. So I spent like 3 years kind of building back up to that.
Yeah.
I got my RX-8. I got it working really well. I really felt like I was like killing it towards the end, and I could not get a good score. Mm. And it wasn't like, you know, I don't think the judging was great, but I was like, you know, I feel like I'm getting boned here. And again, I had I definitely burned some bridges and whatever it is, but I was like, this is just not. I just went to Ryan Stage at the end, and I was like, you're having these judges do too much. I was like, this is crazy for one person to look at these high-level runs and give 4 different scores.
Yeah.
How could you do that? You know, and what if you did this instead?
Which was the separation to
I was like,
line angle and style.
boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
Get rid of this. Make sure the drivers know how the cars move. Like, you know, try to get them involved in the cars more. The judges, excuse me.
Yeah.
You know, like you have people that have never driven cars. So how the fuck do they know like how any of this works?
And this is also at the point where now we're not into like really full angle kits, but people are developing them. The cars are getting faster. We're 400 or 500 horsepower.
400 or 500 horsepower is the standard.
Yeah.
People are flying. Like they're getting really good at tandem. It's not like an easy,
we're not seeing gaps like this.
He didn't spin. Like it's none of that.
It's real tandem.
It's closely knit. It's hotly contested. It's really good driving.
And there's more money on the line. There's sponsorships on the line.
Well, that was what was killing me is I wanted, you know, I was like, we can just get one or two good wrap up a couple of these, and then whenever we get it together, and when you're a privateer and you're like, all right, we're fighting the car this week, we're fighting this, we don't have this, we need to change this. I had a couple of hot events in my RX-8, including Seattle, which was my favorite.
Right.
And I was like, and Joey Redmond came up to me, he was like, you're getting fucked. He was like, your 92 is, like, I got like a 92 or whatever. And I was like, I don't know that I can do, like, I was like, feel like I'm doing this basically as good as anyone else is doing it here. Also, I was the fastest qualifier there. And no one went, like, I was like 78 coming off the bank.
And this is when speed was a part of judging factor as well,
yeah, for sure.
Right? Yeah.
So I'm the fastest qualifier. Like, I can't get a fucking decent score. And I was like, I was so crushed. I was like, it just doesn't make sense. And I didn't want to be like, it's personal. I didn't want to be like, it's because of this, it's become of that. Like, I just think this is just not a fair, I think what
broken.
What I wanted to go was like, there's no upward mobility.
Right.
People are judging the same guys the same way because they're doing too much and they've made it too hard. Mm-hmm. Whereas like a random person can't come up and go, boom, 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 boom. There's your run. There's your 98. Give it to me. It
was even people complain it's hard to understand now. It was way harder to understand back then as well. And there was less transparency to the drivers, especially like towards the production as well, people watching at home.
For sure. So that's how I went at it. I just said, look, man, like you got to simplify this. I've always thought like the more you can simplify this somewhat abstract sport, the better it's going to be for growth and for retention and for people caring about it. People don't always want to feel like it's a conspiracy. They want to go, and it's obviously very nuanced and very complex, but I felt like my goal was to just cut through it and be like, he's faster than him. His style's better than this person. Let's break it down. Let's break this complex thing down and give everybody a duty and like an area of the score that they can actually accurately ingest and calculate and hopefully do better for people from there.
Mm-hmm. Now, did you make the jump to judging at that point, or was that something okay?
He like Ryan, again, to his credit, he heard me out and he goes, I think you're right. Do you want to do it? That was it. He's like, do you want to be a judge? And I was like, oh. Okay.
I didn't know that's where this was going.
I was like, I think that's how it went down. So I was like, here's how you should judge. And he was like, I think you're right. You should be a judge. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I was like, let me think about it. And I was like, yeah, that'd be cool. So I did. That's why we went with it. Mm-hmm. And it was really interesting to see the other side of it and all the different pressures those guys deal with and all, they answer to a lot of different people and sponsors and tracks and drivers and whatever,
protests and angry people.
Protests and for sure.
Yeah, I don't envy the judges of any era.
It is a thankless job.
Yeah.
It is. If you're doing a great job, nobody notices. And if you're doing a bad job, people want to murder you.
Yeah. There's one person that's happy with you at the end of the weekend.
Yeah.
That's the guy who won.
I tell people, like, look, guys, like, we're not perfect. We're doing our absolute best. I have been around drifting as long as anybody here. Yeah. I am invested in doing a good job in this. And I felt like I did what I could. But it's like I said, I can't even imagine being a judge today. Everyone's so good. Everyone is so good. The cars are so dynamic. Like it's so insane.
This episode's really good. I'm just going to remind you, use podcast 25, podcast 25 at checkout when you get FD merch. Save yourself 20%. That's it. Now back.
But yeah, basically that was it. So I did 3 years of that. And then second year, I also was like, let me be like, I kind of helped rewrite there. There was all this back and forth about cars and to their whatever. Drag racers love to cheat. Like that's the bottom line. That's what they come from.
Motorsports likes to cheat.
Yeah, people from
but
we didn't have that. We had drag racers.
Right,
drag racers love to cheat.
Yeah,
which is fine.
Yeah,
because and I talked to Bergenholtz. I love Ron Bergenholtz. He was like, basically, we sat down and we fought over this 2-frame car he'd built, and I was like, why did you do this? And he was like, I'm building a better car. Like I'm evolving the sport. And I was like, nobody asked you to evolve the sport. And he was like, what do you mean? Like I'm here to like.
This is the next step.
You gave me a rule book. I'm interpreting like this. I'm trying to build the best car I can. And for me, I was like awake and calm. Like, yo, this is racing. Like this is racer mentality.
Yeah.
I wasn't mad at him.
You didn't say no, so I did it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So then I think we got some stuff slid, some stuff didn't. We only really outlawed one car entirely.
Which car was that?
Sam's car.
Oh, Sam. Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a lot done to that car.
Do you know what car I'm talking about?
Was this the old Camaro, like the first one?
Challenger.
Oh, the Challenger. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, because we were like, it was insane. And we fought with them back and forth because I was like, I can't remember what the big sticking point was. But it was too much. It was like, you're not inside you've moved everything so much. And and then it came out that it was a Dodge Magnum on with a Challenger body on it.
Got it.
And we were like, it's definitely not cool. Like you can't do that.
You misrepresented
You can't
what
do
this
that.
is.
Like it's not the call, which I think they were like, look, again, same racer mentality. It's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
We couldn't get that. It's pre-production. We got a body. We got a car. We made it work. Like whatever. And I was like, okay, cool. But we didn't. They let it fly.
Is there anything else you found? I mean, you can name names if you want to. You don't have to. But like, because I tried getting a lot out of Kevin of like, what is some crazy shit that you saw people try and get away with? I think that's a great example. But like, was there any other maybe smaller stuff where you're like, shit, that was really smart. Like, I kind of wish I would have
sorts of stuff. I mean, like, there are things we couldn't always police. You know, Reese would come out with like a new weird wing every other event.
Right.
You know, and you're like, I guess that's okay. You know, I'd be like the technical inspector. I guess that's fine. You know,
he was trying to like move smoke around and
move
blind
smoke
people
and like get sideways. Essentially, like if he can load the car, it's like a sideways wing.
Yeah.
Like at
So
Irwindale, we
get,
put
like,
on this
side
one
by.
side.
Yeah.
And, like to get the car pushed down, like a gurney flap, but put it down the side of your car. Like all this kind of interesting stuff. So that was wild. There's been a bunch of hidden traction control for a long time, for sure.
Yeah.
And the more I learned, the more impossible it was to police.
Yeah, because
It doesn't even matter. There's nothing you can do.
banning wheel speed sensors was pretty early on.
Yeah, we did that.
Doesn't
matter.
No,
GPS. You can do
GPS.
GPS. You can do a thing called rate of rise. It's where you
Okay.
take your car out and you hook it up and you drive it, right, hooked up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now your car knows, your ECU knows if it's a gnarly one, how fast the RPMs can rise at a certain speed.
Okay.
And if it's faster than that, you're getting wheel spin.
Right.
So basically, you can then take that and deduce how much faster it could. You can dial in a certain amount of wheel speed,
Right.
by saying, "Oh, let it go 30% faster than the actual rate of rise that we've
Set a rev
recorded."
limiter at that.
It just sets to like it'll pull power, pull a little timing, do whatever you want to do,
Got it.
and then you can do whatever.
Yeah.
You know, there are cars that don't really spin, and it's you know like I don't. There's just some brilliant dudes out there, man. Like it's tough to really understand what everyone is doing, but. You know, there's also like, you can put 4 batteries in your car. Like, we're like, you can only have so much ballast.
That's changed. Yeah. I remember guys running like
I had
4
3
RVs.
I think I had like 2 batteries and 50 pounds of weight in my side because I wanted to be on a 265 and that car was super light.
Right.
So I was like, well, I'll put a battery over here and then like
Big RV batteries too.
Yeah, battery,
of
but
course,
then like,
yeah.
I'm going to hold it down with like 316 steel, which also weighs 40 pounds, like just to get the numbers and the weight where we wanted it. We had to do all that stuff.
There's a lot of stories about people adding like tungsten blocks in places and hiding them inside of like welded panels and stuff.
Put them in the
concrete
pipes.
filled roll cages and things like that.
Yeah.
It's wild what people will do.
Yeah.
And
It's also an extremely challenging sport to keep tabs on and to be a judge or to like whatever you want, police it, because nowhere else is like a 2,000-pound car racing a 3,000-pound car racing a 4,000 with different power and different drivetrains and different whatever. So, for me, a big thing was like the Saturn Sky that Darren had.
Yep.
No offense to Ian's my boy at ASD. We're buddies. Like he's brilliant. I was like, this car is fucking ruining drifting. Like, it's just not cool. That was like, it's not like, and then there was also like the 911 that Tyler had.
Yeah.
Where I was like, this car doesn't look good.
Yeah.
There's no parity between what any of the other cars do dynamically.
There was a famous line that you said about that car, and it was like something along the lines of like, have fun proving Isaac Newton wrong.
Probably.
Yeah.
That sounds like me.
It's really interesting how.
But that car would go into turns like way on the slow side.
Yeah.
Get it turned at light angle.
Yeah.
And then
Power
it
through.
leaves a turn like a 911. Gone.
Yeah.
Gone. It's like doing a wheelie out of the turn, and you're like, oh, I guess that I've slowed down. I'm here to match your angle and speed, and now you're gone.
Yeah, you're doing something that I can't do.
I can't do that because my motor's not in the back. So it's interesting.
You're floating in and then digging out of the car.
Yeah, exactly. Which is so Darren's car. I just thought it's too much. I look at it like this: like to have 1,000 horsepower and that much grip just takes money. Like to keep it together, you need a crazy gearbox and a drive shaft and axles.
You're blowing axles all the time.
Yeah,
You have
like
a
it
team
doesn't matter.
that
So
can-
then you get some $1 billion part, some unobtainium shit, and then nobody else can do that.
Yeah.
So it's it's really cool that you figured out how to do it. And again, like Ian's a genius, and it's. But I was like, this doesn't. I don't think this is helping the sport. So that's when we went to the tire to weight thing, which was like that's when I became that. I was like, we should do this.
Yeah.
And then I think that's when I became a tech manager.
Yeah, it's funny how a lot of those things have still carried on, like now, having to keep stock firewall. Tanner Faust and Steph Papadakis kind of like really
Push
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Taking the welds
Take it out.
hammering the whole thing out.
You can
putting
stretch
back
metal pretty big.
You can stretch it pretty far. Yeah.
Which again, I love Steph for that. Like, he's one of my favorite. He's a brilliant dude who does the best work.
Yeah.
But same kind of thing. Like, but willing to operate a little bit more. Where like some of the other draggers who would be like, just not do it.
Yeah.
He would go, how can I do it to the letter of the law? Oh, you want stock firewall? Cool. I'll take it out. I'll stretch it by 5 inches. I'll put it back in.
Yeah. And then I can
There
fit
you
this
go.
transmission in.
Yeah, that's more of like the Smokey
Yeah.
Eunuch take on it of like, no problem.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, good call. Or even like, okay, this vehicle did come all-wheel drive somewhere else. So
Sort of, yeah.
Now I can do this here. Like, there's one version that came all-wheel drive,
Yes.
so why couldn't I, do that? That to me pushes the sport. I agree that like deliberately breaking the rules that can pull the sport back.
Or
because-
building cars that no one else can build. That
Yeah.
felt to me like this isn't. Look, we always want a good battle.
Yeah.
You don't want it to be all car, right?
Yeah.
With drifting to me, especially early in the first 5, 6, 10 years, was a place where a kid could come in with a $50,000 car and beat a pro in a $300,000 car if they just drove that much harder than them.
And that's still the case now.
Yeah.
So I would say that
Which
what
is
was done then.
The beauty of drifting,
Right.
And like something that does not exist in other motorsports.
No.
And it's really cool. So I was like, we have to like do our best to preserve that. And I felt like cars like Darren Sky was just too much. All the Ryan Turks in the world that can come in with their S13, it doesn't matter. Like that car's not here anymore. It's here, it's gone. Like, it just was not.
Funny enough, though, then Turk drove a Solstice, which
Yeah,
is
for
basically the
sure.
same
Yeah,
car. Not nearly as developed as that
Not
one was.
nearly as gnarly.
No,
Not at all.
He hated that car, too.
Yes. Officially, I don't know. That's for him to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So that was a couple of big sticking points for me why I wanted to just try to make this point. Everything I've done, I feel like I was an absolute lunatic in the beginning, and then I really did try to like serve the sport and its best interests for a long time.
Yeah. I'm happy that we really got to dig into that because there is, a lot of that mentality of your wild days back in the day. Like you were a hellion to say the least. Like you were a crazy dude. I did dig the white sunglasses that you rocked for a long time. Those were pretty sick, pretty ahead of your time on those.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, it just to kind of highlight that part of the sport because we talk a lot about like transformational eras when it comes to drivers. Certain drivers have come into the sport. You could talk about the, day ones, the Reese and the Sam.
Yeah.
Arguably Tanner would be kind of the next one. Then we get into Daigo Saito's era when he came in, just started decimating people. And then, James Dean and then kind of the era that we're in now. But I don't
I think you probably forgot Forsberg's era in there.
Forsberg.
Yeah.
But
give him something.
Yeah, I agree. I guess what I get into though is like a kind of a changing of the guard.
Yeah.
Whereas like Forsberg, obviously very dominant, won championships and stuff like that. But I feel like maybe because he was there for so long that it gets glossed over.
For sure.
Whereas when Daigo came in, it was like, holy shit.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Right?
We haven't seen this.
Yeah.
This dude is,
Yeah, and I mean like you could even put Osbo in that era as well. Like that's
Sure.
the hard part. Like it depends on how you want to break it down, how
I think-
monumental.
Again, not that it's the judging. People come in swinging, and before if they can come in hot,
Yeah.
they have such a better chance of being successful and
Yeah.
really sort of turning the sport on its ear. So yeah, I totally agree. Like, Sam, for sure, it was, Sam was number one
It was the Sam show for 2 years.
for 2 years. And Chris beating him at Irwindale was
Monumental. That was huge.
I got the chills too.
Yeah.
Like that was sick.
Yeah.
By watching, because we were like,
Because his car like caught on fire too in the final run, didn't it? Like
no, that was S15.
Oh,
I'm talking
okay,
about in his Z.
Okay,
On
gotcha.
19s, I had 20. I'd borrowed
Right.
the Endless Z. I was on 20s. I qualified 7. That's the first time I made 16 at Irwindale 04. Chris qualified lower, and then I had to run Reese, who crushed me in his, his GTO was killing it. And then Chris had to run Sam, and I was like, I'll see you in the finals or whatever. I was like, we'll see you in 8 or whatever it was. And then Chris beat Sam, and people lost their fucking minds. I mean, like, the car was a tube frame, like race car Viper, Mid-year, he'd won first event, second event, third event. We had a meeting, which is insane to say and would never happen. Do you know about this meeting?
No.
We had a meeting. They were like, essentially Formula D came out and they were like, this car is illegal. We know it. Everybody knows it. Terrence, the guy running the program, has said to us basically, we can't afford to build another car. This isn't even our car. They rented it for the weekends. Like, we know it's illegal. Can we still run it? And people voted and said yes.
Damn.
Like, other teams are like, fine.
Yeah.
Fine. We all are in this new thing, which it would be maybe reasonable if Sam wasn't stomping the hell out of everyone every time, every absolute chance he had.
Yeah.
In a tube frame. I mean, look, a Viper is basically tube frame anyway, but this was a full-on race car, and it wasn't inside the letter of the law, and we were driving street cars.
Yeah.
So it was so far beyond, like, performance-wise, so much more capable than everything else, that we all voted and were like, let them run, whatever, I guess that's fine.
Yeah.
Which in today, never. It would
there's no way.
never. It would never. People would be like, absolutely not.
See ya.
So then Forsberg, in his SR20 powered Z on 19s, beat like dead to rights at Irwindale, just outdrove him, was shot insane. One of the greatest moments in drifting, period, I've ever seen. For sure. Not even close. I don't think he won the event. He didn't win the event.
He just beat him.
He just beat Sam, and that was enough. Reese won the event. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, that is what makes drifting so incredible, is the fact that can happen. That still happens even today. The low budget driver takes on a Goliath, whether it's with money, speed, or talent, and they can still, nobody's perfect in that sport.
Yeah, for sure. And also one of my favorite things is finally seeing someone like put it, like when you see people like finally put it together, like a privateer, like, oh, they're fighting their car. They like Chelsea. When Chelsea finally was like, we know Chelsea's really good. Chelsea's one of my favorite drivers ever. Yeah. And I love to drive. We've driven together a bunch. So smooth, so fun, but like the right kind of style. 11 tenths. Let's see if it works out. Full on maniac. When we were like, he's eventually gonna put it together. Like it's gonna happen, and then it's gonna be a problem, and then he did. And then he won Long Beach, and then he's like, boom, 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 boom. Yeah. So that's my favorite. When you see guys like, he's kind of getting it. Maybe there's something there, like, and then you're like, oh, this kid's gonna be trouble at some point. When he gets it together, man, he's coming.
It kind of took him dialing it back like 1 or 2 tenths, and like he talked about, he's like, I want to win a championship my way, but I want to win a championship more.
Period. Yeah.
Yeah, than I do my own way.
Yeah.
And talking about it, it's like, not that he said it was bittersweet, but you could tell he was like, I really wanted to win it my way, but I also just needed to win it. Yeah. And it kind of sucks because the rule changes that came up this year probably would have suited him better, and he probably would have won another championship, but that's also just the way it goes. Yeah. So, yeah. It's really nice to hear that you're still keeping up on the sport too. Like, I'm not going to expect you to like watch every event, but like you at least have knowledge of it in the last couple of years.
Yeah,
which is
for
cool.
sure. I didn't watch it at all.
Okay.
For like 4 years.
That's fair, man.
I couldn't because I just missed being out there.
Yeah.
And there were people like Andy Luck hits me up every year, and for 5 years I just was like, I can't go watch these dudes drive. Right. I just don't want to.
It's got to hurt a little.
Yeah. Like I love driving. So. And I love competing, and I was like, I never really got to do what I felt like I could do on track. So it was, I was like, obviously I'm super blessed, and I've had a ton of good fortune, and I got no complaints. But for like a few years, I was like, I'm not watching this. Like, you guys do your thing, I'm going to go do my thing, kind of put my head in the sand. And then later on, I got kind of more involved, and kind of around when Chelsea was sort of hitting in stride. But when I left, I was like, my favorite dudes are Matt Field and Chelsea Denova. Like, those are the dudes who like are gonna, and then of course
they were new at that point.
They were new, and they were like, I was like, those dudes will be for sure problems.
Yeah, I talk a lot about like Matt Field's like incredible season. Then he got the Gears of War car in Irwindale and stuff like that, and like that to me was the moment where I was like, oh shit, this dude's on to something. And Denova coming up through XDC and through the other series, and just like being somebody who could always find a way to run and push platforms and stuff like that, like the engine packages that now we have with all the BMW stuff. Yeah. Now we have solutions for those engines. Yeah. Back then we didn't. He just kept blowing them up, putting another one in, okay, this is what broke. I'll fix it. That was a lot of that early scrappiness that I loved about the sport, and like kind of a callback, I guess, to your original era as well.
Yeah.
Of it's like just anything I can do
To get out there.
And drive. And that's really what gave him the longevity in the sport. That's what got him on RTR and ultimately helped win him a championship. He won the championship himself, but having a vehicle like that, although arguably one of the most difficult cars to drive in drifting.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
I've never driven it. I'm not at that caliber.
If you want to let me drive one, I'll let you know.
Yeah.
What
are you up to this weekend, bro?
Yeah. I'll drive one. I don't, sure, I've driven. I mean, I drove FDs, which is a tough car.
Yeah.
A lot of my cars are pretty sharp edge. My Scions are not the easiest.
No.
Certainly the FRS, the first couple of years, even developing that was tough.
It's really only been in the last couple of years that they've
really dialed
and a lot of it's just the rear suspension. It's just so short, and there's just not a lot to work with.
Yeah.
It's a razor's edge between perfect suspension and then completely useless.
Yeah, they're tough cars. And the steering rack's in a wonky spot stock, and now that they want to putting them inside the crossmember and stuff to get them to work. But
wind up and
I do kind of pride myself a little bit on being able to drive cars that are hard. That's or stockish cars.
Yeah, I mean we've got. Was that project difficult to drive?
But a lot of them were.
Yeah.
The twin engine Impala that we did was
that was nuts.
When I left Motor Trend, I was like, do not let anybody drive this car.
Yeah,
I was like, no. All joking aside, it ran 10 flat, spinning at 142 miles an hour in the quarter mile. And I was like the whole time it's trying to kill you. The whole time it's trying to the back end's going over here, the front's going the whole thing. And then you'd hit the brakes at the top of the track because I didn't have the bias dialed. It would try to spin.
Yeah.
So I was like, do not, all jokes aside, do not let anybody drive this car.
Just disassemble this now,
don't
please.
do it. I was like, if you're going to do it, call up like a Dai Yoshihara or somebody, or Tanner or somebody or something.
Someone who can handle.
I was like, please don't put it, because it was 1,000 horsepower, super heavy, would run like a 9 something probably if we got it to hook right. And I was like, this is not a laughing matter. Like I was like, it's one of the toughest cars I've driven. And I was one of the only times I was like, I'd like to not do this anymore. Like I did a couple runs and I was like, I hammered through them and we did it and I steered it and I got it down and I was like, we're done today. Like that's fine.
Yeah.
Let's call it. They're like, we can maybe get a 9 out of it. It's 10-0. I'm like, let's put it in the trailer.
Yeah.
Let's call
Make
it.
for a good episode. Next episode.
Next time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a wild build. Where did those ideas come from? Were these like brainchilds you've had for a long time or something?
Some stuff a long time. Yeah. Some stuff just organically. The Cyclone, my buddy Pat was like, you should do people have built that kind of car, but he came up with the name and he's like, do it. And I had that in my back pocket for a while. The Impala, I was one of the only people in drifting that had never had a V8 or an LS anything.
Okay.
So I'd done rotaries and I'd done 4 cylinders. And then I'd go over to Hot Rod Garage, and they didn't do any much LS stuff at that point either. But we started getting in. I'm like, oh, cheap turbo LS, let's get into it. So I started looking and started researching and learning. And I love learning about new stuff. And I see all these front wheel drive LSs, and they're like $300. I'm like, why don't people buy these and just turn them sideways? Come to find out, the crank is different, it's shorter. There's no place for an accessory drive. The accessory drive is essentially on the back of the motor. There's no place for mounts. Like, it's totally different.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, fine. But it's still an LS. You can still put a turbo on it and make a bunch of power, which a bunch of people had done it in like Grand Prix and whatever. And then I was like, well, what if you took another one and put it in the back? And then it'd be like all-wheel drive and 16 cylinders. Yeah, that'd be fun. And like for $20,000, quite a bit of car. So that's what we did. And then, it was a lot of like, once the gloves were off and they were like, you can kind of do what you want. Eventually I was like, let me build this car. And after a while, they're like, fine. But a lot of it was, just the stuff I wanted, sitting around wanting to do. Oh, that'd be cool to put this and that or whatever it is. I've been living and breathing cars like every minute of the day for since I was a kid. So it just, once you get if someone's like, hey, we got a budget, like, what do you want to build? I'm like, I've got a book.
I got an idea.
Let me get my phone out.
Yeah.
I'm like,
let's start with budget here and then we'll divide out from that.
I'm like, how much? Okay, not that much. Okay, not that. Yeah. Okay, yeah, we'll do some stuff.
Go to the back pages.
Yeah, I'm like, all right, slow down.
Was there anything that you pitched that they didn't greenlight that you're like, this could have been good, or is that something you might be saving for here?
I'm trying to think.
Like, I don't know what that process looks like. Like, do you just go in and go, okay, what about this? Okay, no, what about this? What about like
sort of.
Yeah.
Well, once the showrunner came in, I pitched like a electric. This is years ago, years like 2000 and I want to say 18. I was like, we should build an electric muscle car when like nobody's
before
doing
like Project X and
a million years
to
before
electric.
that.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, exactly.
Like 3 years before that.
Okay.
I was like, let's do it. I feel like I'm the dude to do it. You know, David is anti-caveman, kill them all, whatever. Gasoline forever, whatever.
I feel like Finnegan would do it.
Maybe.
Just for the shits and giggles.
For
Like,
sure.
does it do a burnout?
That's his motivation a lot of the times. But also he doesn't want to learn, I don't think, like how I was like, there's so much involved.
Yeah.
So I was like, let's figure out how we can do this. And they were like, no. And then finally they were like, fine, maybe. And we were getting towards it. And then it was a no because I think corporate had already agreed to do Project X. And they were like,
Do the electric swap there,
which went terribly. Was not well received and for a lot of pretty obvious reasons. But no, they were cool with that. I tried to do a drifting show there once that eventually they pitched a drifting show to me.
Right.
That wound up being Drift This, and I didn't.
Which was great.
Yeah.
I did. It was a little hokey.
For me, I was like, I don't think I would love to do a drifting show. I don't want to do this one. It was going to be me and Reese.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was what I'd pitched. And I talked to Reese, and they were like, okay. And then they were like, we want it to be this now.
And this is Reese Marin.
Reese Millen.
Oh, Reese Millen. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. I was thinking Reese Marin, the judge that's in there now.
Reese Millen, I was like, you know what'd
Either
be
way,
great?
it's still good, yeah.
Reese is awesome. He plays a good kind of like, not a heel, but like weird, very different. He's a good straight guy.
Yeah.
For me being kind of the troublesome one. He was in, he was like, let's do it. And then it just became hokier and hokier. Like they were like, we want to do like will it drift kind of stuff. And I was like, I don't think the first thing you should do in drifting is that. Because drifting is people hold it so dear to their hearts.
Right.
That
The
like,
same way hot rod guys do.
Yeah, they're just not going to want to see you making a mockery of it the whole time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, also, you're going to spend a fortune, which again, doesn't really speak to these core fans. And then the cars aren't going to drift that great because there's giant trucks and limos and stuff.
I think they tried it a little bit with, what was it, Runs Good? But it seemed a little too late at that point.
Yes.
Like, good show.
Good show.
Glad
That
everybody
show,
was on the show.
Yeah. I think
that's
show
what,
was just came at a bad time for
I agree.
the network, but I think that was a good show.
Yeah, I agree. And that was good cast, very funny group of people.
Yeah, great.
Very informative.
Love
but
it.
Yeah. I don't know it's hard with YouTube and maybe not how cookie cutter builds things have gotten to. Like right now to build a pro car, pick your chassis, pick your engine.
Yeah.
Everything else is laid out for you. Here's the you got one of maybe 3 transmissions you're going to use. You can use one of 2 rear ends.
Yeah.
You go to, you can get a cage ready to go. You just weld it in place. Everything's
It
perfect.
takes half a day. Yeah.
Exactly. So I would like to see more. I really like obscure builds. I love diesel drift cars. One of my first drift cars was a diesel. You talked about having a Thunderbird. One of my first, second or third drift cars, an 88 turbo coupe.
Yeah.
That we threw a circle track engine in, the 2.3, big turbo on it, melted pistons. It was incredible.
Yep.
That to me, I would love to see, but that's just a personal thing because I'm like, show me chassis nobody's driving with engines nobody's driving, and let's just see how they drive. They're going to be terrible.
Yeah.
But that's the fun of it.
Even looking back in like Bubba Drift and stuff, I was so anti that at the time. But now I'm like, that's pretty cool. Yeah. For me, I was like, ugh. I shot myself like, even when I got on Falcon, I was such a pain in the ass about everything. Like I was like, I was like, my rules, whatever. Like that's what I was like, they're like, we're going to give you Sego's S14. It was wrecked. They're like, we're going to rebuild it, stick you in there.
Yeah.
450 horsepower, S15 motor, S chassis. You'll do awesome. And I was like, I want an FT. I was like, no, I have to have an FT. Like I was like, which is like notoriously difficult to drive.
Yeah.
It's very square, track short, wide car.
Beautiful car, but
they're the dopest, not the best drift car.
No.
And I look back and I'm like, why didn't I just drive this stupid S13? Like it would have been awesome. We could have been like pretty dominant. Like we would have really been able to put a good package forward on track. But same, like I was so died. I was like, I'm an RX-7 guy. Like forget it. RSR asked me to drive their S2000.
Damn.
And I even tested it. And they were like, do you want to drive it? And I was like, no, not really. Not really. S2000s are dumb.
I mean, also not an easy car to drive.
Yeah, but as, you know, I feel like
Easier.
I love that Alex got to drive it and
Yeah.
did well in it. But I like so many times I was like, nah, I'm too cool for that. Like I don't,
Yeah,
you know,
hindsight's
it's not-
2020
for
though.
sure. I'm not again, no regrets. But the Bubba Drift stuff, I was like, you got to be fucking kidding me. I was like, you know, like we're trying to do this thing serious, and then these
Yeah.
guys were like, well, how about a G body with a V8? And now I'm like, how about a G body with a V8? That's pretty cool.
It's actually a good setup.
It's actually
yeah.
a pretty good car. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the metric chassis, as they call them.
Yeah, the metric chassis.
It's cool. Yeah, I think it's super. I'm also all for that. You know, I don't. There was also this push at one point. They were like, no old cars. It's ruining the professional vibe and, you know, that kind of stuff. Like they wanted a lot of new chassis. So.
Yeah, there's always been that rumor of like, okay, nothing older than like 20 years. And I'm like, man, you're going to literally cut out the most competitive chassis we have.
Yeah.
But we're having new cars. We have the new Supras in there, you know.
Well, here's the thing, like a $50,000 S13 or 80,000 is dramatically better than a, you know, FRS or whatever, something brand new that's being developed.
Yeah.
Because like you spend all this money on custom everything and it takes, you know, call it the new Super or whatever. Like it's just, you just can't do it.
Yeah.
So if I'm a privateer, you got to let me do the tried and true stuff.
Yeah.
That's, people should look at it like, I've got this budget. What's the most effective package I can put on track?
Yeah.
Which is the absolute opposite of like what I did for the first 5 years of drifting.
Yeah, but it took you falling down for other people to realize where the rope was tripping them up.
Yeah,
right.
maybe.
It sucks that you know it ended up being you in that case, but it wasn't just you. There was other drivers that made those mistakes.
Oh, for sure.
And at the time, it was kind of that rock star mentality too. You're like,
yeah.
I'm Tony fucking Angelo.
Yeah, I wanted an RX-7. You know, I was like, I can have an FD. I'm gonna get an FD.
Yeah.
Like, that was the coolest.
Yeah, but I don't know. I hope you wouldn't change it.
No.
I hope if you were given an opportunity now to come back, and you know that leads me into the question I, of course I have to ask, which is like, what would it ever take to get you to come back? But I think at that point you'd be like, I know what I need to put together. I know how this needs to run, and it's not going to be Hot Boy. It's not going to be all that exciting.
It'd be a V8.
It's
for
just going to
sure.
work. Yeah.
It'd be a V8. It'd be something dialed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, man. It looks fun. I can still drive pretty good. It'd be really fun to try to get keyed up and compete for sure. I don't know that everybody can come back. I think I came back pretty much as good as I'd ever been after 3 years at judging and stuff. Like we didn't miss a qualifier pretty much. We qualified for every event and felt pretty good. And even developing the FRS from year one, we had some. We had some good finishes.
Yeah.
But I'm just really busy now.
Fair enough.
I would hop in. I told Vaughn if he ever wants to like split a season, I would do it. Something like that would be what it would take for sure.
I think it would be really cool to build a series where it's maybe limited to like 235 tires.
Yeah.
Which is going to now limit your horsepower pretty dramatically. Make it a heritage kind of racing thing. Bring back drivers who haven't competed in a long time, and just do that. I mean, even if it's like a one event thing or 2 or 3 rounds or something like that, we do one East Coast, one West Coast.
Yeah.
You just had to compete in FD at some point in time. You can come back. It's a 235 tire, run whatever you want to run.
There was a time, which I don't know how aware you are of this, but people were coming from all over to do it, and they just give you a license. There was no real licensing for the first couple of years.
Yeah.
You show up with a decent car, they let you drive it.
Well,
Dude, I remember being on track with like Kit Car Cobras and like the most Tyson Beckford, like male model dudes who thought that was cool, like whatever.
Yeah.
Like circuit rate, like real nasty front-wheel drive touring car guys, like many times over, like gnarly.
They thought they could do it.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And then they wouldn't qualify.
No.
Yeah. Because there was, back in the day, it was you qualify for top 16. It wasn't even top 32.
No, that was it.
And there were
Go home if
70, I think 72 drivers or something was like the most at any point in time.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I had one event.
Yeah.
I would say, I thought it was even more, but I believe it.
And all qualifying for 16 spots.
Most people are going home.
Yeah.
Yeah,
A lot of
it
people
was
are going
wild.
home. Yeah.
And they would do this, they still had a seating thing. So it was, I was always, a lot of the years I was ranked like 18, 19, which is like the worst. So
on the bubble.
I could drive and they would give those 16 guys 2 hours of practice.
Yeah.
Then they would give the other 50 people 2 hours of practice. except some kid who'd like had no business being there would blow the track up for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And you'd get like 1 or 2 runs.
Yeah, pin it into the gravel,
And then you would, try to qualify. So it was a tough swing there. I know now they're doing the seeded thing, which is interesting to me. I almost look like qualifying and tandem as like different sports at this point.
it is. I think seeding right now is not perfect, but it has so many other positive benefits that are getting overlooked really quickly.
Yeah.
Setting your car up for tandem right away. Like now the chase line is longer than the lead line is in practice. Whereas before qualifying, you couldn't get anybody to chase you. It was just all leads, and then we had to force people to go into the chase line. And now it's the opposite. We have to force people to lead. I do think it provides more driving for lower ranked drivers.
Mm-hmm.
They're not having to face rock stars right off the bat in a lot of cases.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they are, they're getting at least 1 or 2 battles in
Yeah.
before they have to go into it. I do think it will ultimately lead to better drivers in the bottom ranks moving up quicker and developing faster and not leaving the sport as quick. But there's weird pairings that have come up with it. There's guys that have faced each other 3 times, 4 times in a row right off the bat. And I did go back and I'm like, that's happened with qualifying too. There are drivers who have faced each other
For sure.
3 and 4 times, in a season. It does happen. It's just the law of randomness. It will end up happening.
There are people I never drove with. There's people I drove with.
Yeah.
It just is what it is.
Yeah.
But I like I said, but we had to tailor some things before too. Like when we were judging, I was a big supporter of like bumping qualifying points like through them because people just drive like here's a run.
Yeah.
Here's a run. It'll get me in, and then I'll go do battle.
Yeah.
And we'd be like, all right, well, top qualifier gets so many champions. Like we were
Right.
we're like bump it up, make it so that these guys are trying to like set the track on fire.
could
Because
be
if we're
the
gonna have people
difference.
out here watching single runs, I want them pushing super hard.
Yeah.
So that could be the difference in like your whole championship. So we'd be like, all right, here you go get it. So that was really fun. But yeah, I totally get it. I mean, it's really long. It's a long day. I'd love for it to be, I get what they're trying to do now, which I think makes more sense. Like it should be a fun event. It should be a really fun experience for people.
Yeah.
So it makes sense.
Yeah. It's the development of the sport. And it's cool because the sport is so young in the grand scheme of racing. It is very, very young. So we can develop and change things. And, there's repercussions to all of it, but it's not that massive.
Yeah.
Right. Formula One's changing all the time. Next year is a complete overhaul in regulations. They're all new cars.
Yeah.
Different tracks. They change everything.
I don't think FD should be like afraid to be very proactive and making big change. Whenever.
I've asked a lot of recent drivers this, but considering your stance on tube frame cars, at least in the past, do you think there is room to have like a full unlimited class in drifting and then still continue what we have now?
I mean, I don't think that there's enough money in the sport to warrant it. Like you're going to have 20 people spending $1 million to build the cars.
You could argue though that would bring in the money.
I don't think so.
No.
I mean, why are they not here now? Like what? Because they don't think they can get a fair shot? For me, like being representative of real car is such a strong selling point of the sport.
My argument would go to the budget of a top fuel team versus the budget of a stock body team in drag racing.
Yeah, for sure.
A top fuel car is not a stock looking car by any means, and they have massive, massive amounts of budget in comparison to a stock frame vehicle. So that would be my argument with the money part is like, it is possible that it is not enough of a spectacle.
Yeah.
That is maybe why that money isn't there yet. Or why
I
you
wonder.
have teams.
I wonder. I mean, it's like for me, what's going to get the best driving? What's going to like put the best package on track?
Right.
Is it going to be two like absolutely insane tube frame cars? Maybe. I don't know that I see it, but I hear you. I think they shouldn't be opposed to it, but it's just for me. I don't think I've seen enough. I mean, I've seen like if you look at it like dirt racing, like the full-on sprint cars are psychotic.
Right, and then who's watching the 2.3, the Thunderstock, or whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah, road runners and whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Or the
definitely
front
different.
wheel drive class.
Yeah.
That's the most attainable vehicle, but it's a bunch of neons and cobalts and Beetles.
Yeah,
but who's watching it?
Dynamically, the cars are so intense, I think, already. But,
Yeah.
you know, I think it would...
But they were back then,
Then what?
too.
Then what? It's like, how are you everyone going to have is there going to be like a crate motor or an engine program that everybody digs into, and then like you just hang your door panels on it and
Maybe.
they all weigh the same? It's interesting, but
Or what about like a full spec class where it is like, no, these are all the exact, you run, maybe you get a choice of suspension, spec engine, spec chassis. You can pick your own suspension, change that up, you know, similar to like an Indy.
yeah,
But maybe it, you know, let's say Nissan gets on board and is like, hey, here's a bunch of Z's.
Yeah.
Here's 16 of them. You know, we'll have team owners and they can draft up their drivers.
I just think the varied like size and weight and power plants is so much a part of the sport.
Okay.
But you know, whatever.
I haven't had the opportunity to have that discussion
Yeah.
with someone who came from that very early generation. That's
I think there was a time when, and not to dispute how gnarly everyone is,
right.
but really there was like maybe a high water point of like when we would have such close battles because the cars didn't start and stop so fast. Like you'd throw them in 2010, 11, 12. Like they would
float.
They would float.
yeah.
They would skate
They
a
were
little.
predictable.
Yeah, and then they were slow. They were like pumping smoke. But you know, now I watch it and it's such a thrash.
Yeah.
You know, I went to Jersey last year just to see, and I was like, yo, these cars they move so much. Like
Yeah.
they hook so hard. And they're like very darty. Like, you know, a lot of
They
the...
look like dirt track cars.
Exactly.
It looks like a sprint car in a lot of ways.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
especially the Mustangs.
Before it would be like, throw them up, and then people would be like really, you know,
yeah.
kind of, it was a little bit more artful, but, you know, I don't know, man. Whatever like keeps the sport growing, I think makes the most sense. But I think there was a real point when like cars were more fun, certainly to drive,
Yeah.
than than they are now. And it was like, maybe, like I said, just a little bit more pleasing to watch. But not that drivers are better than they've ever been.
Right.
And they're driving harder than people have ever driven, for sure. It's just not always like, oh, that's better than that. You know, it looks so herky-jerky sometimes. And, you know.
Yeah, no, you don't have to, you don't have to pull any punches on it. I
Yeah.
understand what you're getting at. Like
Yeah.
a lot of motorsports have gone through that as well, too,
Yeah.
where like the progression gets to a point of almost inhuman level, and you're like,
yeah.
we're now nearing
Yeah.
the edge of what humans are capable of. I
Yeah.
mean, it's why you had to run restrictor plates forever, because cars were coming off track.
Yeah.
They were going so fast that cars were flying and people
I
were
mean,
dying.
how hard must these cars be to focus on? You know, like even when I got back, the leap from when I stopped judging to when I got back in the car, everyone had added 200 horsepower and
Yeah.
a ton of grip.
Yeah, and that was like those tires at that point in time
like
were
10 years ago.
obscene.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I got in and I was like, I feel like I'm in the car for half the time. First off, I can only do this for like an hour.
Yeah.
And my brain's done.
Yeah.
Like we would go test the FRS, and after like 4 sessions, we couldn't get any more good data. I was like, I'm spent, dude. Like I can't. It's everything happens so fast. It's so gnarly, and cars are probably, I haven't been in one in a while, but I'm sure they're just more and more insane. But it was that, and I was like, I talked to Chris. I was like, I feel like I'm on the bank for half the time. Like, I used to be Seattle. I used to throw it out there, and I'd be like, I'm doing this.
now
Now it's like, and that was 10 years ago, and so now it's just got to be.
I'd
just
love
so
to know
wild.
what the lap time difference is in Seattle now.
Probably insane.
Probably 8-9 seconds shorter.
It's probably it's significant because it used to be like 43 seconds, I think, something.
Yeah, I think-
bet it's.
I think we're into the
closer to
30s
30.
now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I'd have to double check. I'm sure somebody listening is going to like do the math and be like, yeah, we've shaved 6 seconds off.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Which is, it's not a lot of road.
Not a lot of track
to do that with.
Yeah.
I would love to see you jump into a modern car now and see how many runs it would take before you're like, okay, I think I can drive this now.
Yeah.
Or like, would it be 1? Would it be 5? Or you just get out and be like, nope, I'm cool.
Yeah, I don't
This
know.
is stupid.
I have no idea. Yeah, I would try
Yeah.
it for sure.
I'm sure we could talk to somebody. Chris, what are you up to? You just
Yeah.
gotta even like the Ultimaniac or something like that.
Yeah.
Like some of the
Speaking
crazy
of
demo
frame
cars.
cars, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That'd be a sick car to have out. Big body. I like big body cars drifting.
Yeah.
It looks cool. They rotate a
They're
little
so
slower.
tough, yeah.
Yeah, you can see kind of what's going on a little bit better.
I like the RX-8 so much because it had so much wheelbase for
Yeah.
its size. It moves
And
so
for its weight.
well.
Yeah.
It moves so well.
Yeah. It just, that chassis kind of hit like a point where they just stopped developing stuff for it. One, Mazda just didn't make them anymore.
Yeah.
The Renaissance engine
That's a
was
good
just
car.
not great.
They can be such good cars. They have
They can be.
so many good things going for
Yeah,
them.
you cut the cats off of it.
Yeah.
You run premix in it, and you redline it at least once a day, and it's a great car.
Yeah.
yeah.
I meant on track, but that works too.
I meant daily.
Yeah.
But yeah. I don't know. You still don't see a lot of people driving them. A lot of people drifting even at grassroots events. There's a handful of them out there.
Yeah.
They make kits for them. Like it's available.
I said on one of I did a video about like cars you should be buying, and they're
RX-8?
RX-8's an absolute sleeper value. Value's crazy. $800, you get a multi-link car with an incredible rear suspension. You can put whatever motor in it.
They are fun.
Yeah, 106.5-inch wheelbase or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like it's good size car to go do anything with. Yeah, but it's also super short, super light. It's super stiff chassis. You get the later rear subframe. It's already done some anti-squats done to it. It's a good car.
You still got it all, man. It's all up there.
It's been a while, but yeah,
How was going out just party drifting a couple weeks ago?
really fun.
How long had it been since that?
So I didn't really a real drift car I hadn't driven in a while. I kind of did. We did a black C5 on HRG.
Yeah.
Can't remember if I did much drifting before that. I'd driven a Corvette for Motor Trend like early on when I got the job, like it's a stock car, sliding it around and stuff like that. But like really out drifting, probably once, like 5 years in, and then I did again. It had been years, but felt pretty good. I drove it my C5, which is basically like all part shop max, coilovers, handbrake, angle, knuckles. That's it.
Yeah. Just
And a
solid grassroots
truck,
kind of car.
6 liter, making 500 horsepower.
Perfect.
Yeah, cost me $300.
Yeah.
For the motor. So that and some decent sized tires, and I'm off and running.
255s or
265s.
265, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great setup.
It's awesome. So that car, I literally went out. I've been promising these dudes, I'm like, I'm coming back for like 7 years, right? And by the end, they're like, fuck you.
Yeah.
We'll believe it when we see it.
All right,
Because they're like, went from being like, we can't wait. It'll be so fun. Like, you're done pro drifting and you're back in PA. And then, like, eventually they're like, can you stop? And I'm like, I'm serious, though. I bought a car. I'm going to do it. So then I came out to the last event of the year, which traditionally it doesn't have a lot of drivers anyway. And I drove it, and I went. It took me like 3 laps to be like, I can do that. I'm still pretty good at that.
Yeah.
I'm not, like, I feel really comfortable. The car needs a few things dialed, and I want to make some changes. But I went from being like, I'm such a prick. I went from being like, God, I sure hope I can do this, to being like, oh, I'm pretty comfortable. To like third lap, I was like, I'm the baddest motherfucker on the planet. Like, I was like, oh yeah. And I was so like, I feel good. I was like, I'm like feeling myself so quickly.
Yeah.
And it's a Corvette. Number one, Corvettes rip.
Oh, they're great.
It's like, oh, they're already race. We spend so much time as kids building race cars out of not race cars that if you just start with a Corvette and you put seats in it and some angle, you're off to the races.
Well balanced, makes all the power you need.
Yeah, so that was it's a really fun car. And then I got to drive it a bunch at East Coast Batch, but I got to make it run cooler and I got to do a bunch of things to it. But generally, felt really good. Was building a 240 for a long time. Like what was going to be a pretty epic 240 and wound up just like, it just didn't get any traction on the channel and I just didn't feel like pushing it. You know what I mean? Like I was like, I have the C5.
Yeah. You traded it for some bikes, didn't you?
I just traded it for a couple Harleys. Yeah, last week.
Insert middle-aged joke.
Yeah, for sure. Which another thing, like I would have absolutely like made fun of for 25 years of my life easily. And now
it's still. Do you, like. Are you still struggling with that like punk rock mentality? The East Coast fuck you versus they're like, I got kids. I've got something I'm trying to make. Making a career out of, but like trying to make this into potentially retirement at this point.
For sure.
What's that? I'm 35.
Mm-hmm.
You got a few years on me, not many. What is that struggle like now at that age where you're like, shit, this is the age I'm at. I have to figure out the rest of my life. I have to set myself up from that, but I'm still not over being young and stupid.
I don't have that. Like I still have a little fire in me, but generally like I try to think I have so many responsibilities. I wear the yoke of like supporting like my girls and I have employees and whatever. So that all comes into my brain pretty quickly. It's not too much. I generally try not. I'm much more reserved and patient and stuff. in the grand scheme. So I haven't really done myself a disservice in a minute.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
No,
Like,
but
also like I thought I'd be dead by 25.
Yeah.
And was pretty sure that would happen, and then didn't, and then had to go like, oh, I guess I have to figure out a life now and like a job and stuff.
Yeah.
So that has gone pretty well. The rest of that second half has been pretty cool. And again, like, man, I was such a wild animal drifting and just kind of like growing up in front of all these people painfully. That like, I've learned enough. I certainly like am not the best in a super professional environment. I just get so bored. Like, like the meetings and stuff.
Can we do cool shit now? Yeah.
I'm like, can I just go build the cars, man?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think this should be my job. But yeah, no, generally, I'm definitely different. It's just a little bit, the age and perspective and stuff.
Yeah.
Having kids is big.
I hear you.
Having little girls is big. It's like, man, I want to be good for them. I want to show them. I want to hopefully make them skip over so many mistakes I made.
Yeah.
And I want to prepare them for a future, so all those things.
Yeah, our job as dads is to give them a life better than the one we had.
That's the job.
That's how I've
Absolutely.
looked at it.
And I look at it also like, man, the world is only getting tougher and maybe uglier and certainly like weirder and it's very divisive. And I want to set these kids up. I want them to know, like, when I'm gone and like they're like, oh well, we have this. Dad set us up with that, or like we have that. Like, I want them to appreciate that for sure. But also, I want them still doing it. You still want
them to be like, my dad does cool shit.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. They think. I think they think I'm all right.
So, are you still reading as much as you used to? Apparently, you used to be a very, very heavy into books. Is that still something you do?
Not as much. I'm very consumed by the show and by being a parent.
Okay.
Not as much. I did used to read quite a bit. Yeah.
I thought it was such a cool juxtaposition to hear about these fun stories. And then I was like, yeah, but then he'd also be the guy who's like, once the crowd was gone, he'd be in his room reading and chilled out and like always had a stack of books.
Yeah, that's for sure. I don't know, man. I feel like I'm a product of my parents a little bit. My mom was like valedictorian, editor of the yearbook, like went to school on a full scholarship, first one in her family, graduated in 3 years while having her first kid, and then got her first master's with 2 of us, and then her second master's with 4 of us, and then went from being a part-time professor at her community college to then full-time, and then tenure, and then on a bunch of boards, and then the dean, and then the provost.
That's nuts.
So like, she's wild.
Yeah.
And then, but also my dad was the worst kid in school, like just a complete ruffian lunatic who was only just known for like setting things on fire and getting into fights. So I have these 2 wolves inside of me.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Do you still make your bed every day?
No.
Okay.
No. Did I do that? I guess I did that.
I heard a story that you were like, when crashing on couches, you were very respectful. Like,
if I crash on your couch, I'm making.
You're like, okay, making the bed. I'm gonna fold the sheets up.
Absolutely,
like,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's same thing. It's just fun to hear about those both sides. So it leads to, and don't take this the wrong way, but like it shows somebody who very much loves attention.
Yeah.
But when you're ready for it to be over, it needs to be over now, and I'm going away.
Yeah. Well, for sure. We also didn't know how to manage any of it. No one else except the kids that were there. I look at it, obviously not the same scale, and we're not whatever, but it was like a Dogtown scenario. Like we were all of a sudden, this was a thing. We were doing this weird sport for like a year, and we got pretty good at it, and we really loved it, and we thought it was awesome. And then all of a sudden, we're doing it in front of 50,000 people. And our weekends were unlimited bar tabs, and we're like full-on rock star
travel.
Because
we didn't even get into that.
Being in like Champ Car or whatever, or like in Canada in front of like 80,000 people, and being like in nights out and whatever. And then we'd go home and we'd live in a garage.
Yeah.
So like when we got it on, we were getting it on. Like we were getting it in as hard as we could. And then we'd come home and just do, try to live like a pretty meager whatever, like try to get refocused on whatever we're doing.
So weird.
It was nuts. It was a wild time. Even when like the 05 Falcon stuff, like, we shared room. I shared a room with Turk for a year, like, and then Mikey Edwards like lived on our couch. Like we just did whatever. We were living like a drift flop house, like in La Cañada.
Yeah.
So, Yeah, it's hard to explain, but yeah, for sure. I definitely, and even, I didn't really know what the TV stuff would be like, or if I could do it, or if it all, whatever. But it's certainly like there's still quite a bit of, attention or whatever you want to call it.
I know you left Hot Rod before everything kind of fell apart.
Mm-hmm.
In hindsight now, do you look back and could you see the signs? Like, do you feel like you made the right call getting out when you did, or was it like a completely separate?
It was pretty separate, but I also didn't have a good feeling about it.
Okay.
For me, like the shows were the best part. Shooting was awesome.
Right.
My team was awesome. Lucky's awesome. David, Mike, like we had an absolute blast. Best job ever. But also on the corporate level, it was all of these very like, hold on a second. Yeah, so here we are. All right, yeah.
Good,
so for me, leaving Motor Trend, yeah, I didn't do it because I thought that like curtains were going to fall.
Right.
But there was a ton of stuff on the corporate side. Like the job was a dream.
Right.
Like I loved our directors and producers, and Lucky was the man, and and Mike and David, and it was a dream, complete dream. And the fact that it like, I got to build my show kind of up out of nothing, and it worked really well. It was really rewarding and satisfying. But there was also like every year was some huge questionable decision by corporate that it was like, oh, I don't think that's going to go great. Mm-hmm. Oh, we're never coming off of YouTube. And then like we'd come off of YouTube and it's always going to be free. Like we're going to do this subscription thing, but like we're never going to take our old stuff off of YouTube, and you'll always have a free version of it. Oh, you know what? Now there's not a free version of it. And you know what? Now we are taking all the old stuff off of YouTube. Like, so there were all these things where like really felt like they were alienating their fan base, and it didn't seem. It was hard to wrap my brain around how that was going to work long term, making all these different decisions. So, I got out because for my personal life, it made a lot more sense.
Yeah, you were.
Yeah,
we don't have to get into all the details. It was just a crazy personal time for you, and
exactly.
You had to make the right call.
And I think I did that. And I'm happy I did it, and now everyone is a YouTuber. So I feel like I'm happy to be ahead of the curve a couple years for sure.
Yeah. I really hope you still get to make content with them. I think you and Mike are such a good combo. Anytime you guys work together, it was some of my favorite episodes because it's just the newer school mentality. I think he's got a couple years on you.
He does.
Yeah. So he's got a little bit more of the old school, and then you're kind of pushing to be like, all right, come here, let's do this. Like, I still respect everything you're doing, but like, and he's willing to come with you on a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm really proud of like. I never got to do a roadkill with David, which we always talk about now. Like, damn, we never got to do.
I think it would be funny in that like, what was like the old Looney Tunes, like the old dog and the young dog. Yeah, like that kind of thing. But
I mean, I think David and I are a lot more alike than me and Mike.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. But also, everything I've done with Mike has been an absolute.
Yeah.
Like we were never not screaming, laughing at some point, and like having a blast. And then I think the Drag Week episode that we did, I think is probably the best thing we did on Motor Trend. Oh, and also David, who again, like is so has made a list of top 10 roadkill episodes, and maybe 2 or 3 of them are me and Mike, which is so like he's such a good dude, an honor. Yeah, like I'm like, look, you guys built this thing. Like I'm happy to step in here and there, and
when you need someone,
somebody, you can always call me.
Yeah,
but like it's obviously with this amazing thing that they built, but I think we made some pretty cool stuff for sure.
I don't want to take too much more of your time. I wanted to ask a kind of a tough one. What do you, when this is all done, when this is all over, when, we look back on the history of FD, what do you hope is remembered about you and your time in the sport?
Oh, that's interesting. I just hope that people think that like I just had a positive impact. I really tried to make the sport better once I kind of, figured out how everything was going and kind of grew up a little bit. But just that, I helped build it. I've talked, like when I just gave this 240 to a kid who's just starting out, just competing, and he was like, man, like, I'm so stoked that it's your car. And when I was like, I try to be humble for sure, but it does feel good to be like, I did help bring this thing together from like a lot of different ways. You know, we organized events and we drove and we judged, or I judged. I say we a lot. I do that thing.
Yeah. That's
Anyway,
all
I
good.
helped
That's
organize events and I judged stuff and I helped with the rules and all these sort of things. But I just really loved it, man. I still do. It's really fun, and I just hope people think that like, that I had a positive role in it, and a positive part, helping it grow and become what it is.
Yeah. I mean, as long as nothing changes between now and then, I think that's going to be the case.
Yeah, for sure.
Dude, I really appreciate it.
For sure.
I'm honored to be in the shop. I'm glad we took the time.
I honestly, so I got a call, if I can just,
No, please.
from Ryan Sage, who I haven't talked to in a very long time. And when we were judging, we speak pretty regularly, and he's a good guy. He goes, hey, man, hope you're doing well or whatever. I need you to hear a thing. And he was like, Andy Luck did the FD podcast, and you're going to have to approve it, dude. And I was like, okay, what do you mean? And I listened to it, and I approved, I think, pretty much everything. Somebody else that you guys all know, who we used to hang out with a lot, might have made some changes.
No comment.
Somebody more of a business type guy. It's fine. We have different roles in the world. I don't really have whatever. And I heard you on there, and I was pretty flattered because you were like, he was like, I'm going to tell you, Tony, and you were like, I've heard. You said something like, everybody that comes on here has a Tony Angelo story, and almost always it's one I haven't heard, which I thought was not. I was like, oh, I didn't even think anybody thought about me in the FD world, really. And then, I was like, oh, that's pretty wild. And then you were like, I think, you were like, that's like one of my number one guests to get on here. So I was like, all right, let's do it.
Yeah, no, I'm stoked. I'm glad that you pushed me to do it in person as well.
Yeah.
Because we talked about it. You're like, I'm not doing it online. You
Yeah.
can come here.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you're in New Jersey, just pop by. And I'm like, all right.
Yeah, no, it's just way better.
No, I wish I could do more in person.
Yeah.
For me, it's just admittedly, like they give me a budget and I'm like, I can't make this work with this budget to do it all in person.
Yeah,
So-
for sure. I get that.
But hey, maybe next year I'll just like bump for a raise.
It's awesome. Yeah, I figured we would dig into more scandalous things, but that's just been fine.
Man, I mean, I got a few. It was like you yelling. Hang on, where was it?
All I wanna say-
something about hating beans.
Yeah. Oh, that's fucking Jared. So I don't like, we're on some, that's just,
See, I have them in here. The notes
Yeah,
are there.
yeah,
I'm just
okay,
like,
yeah.
man, this is going too off me to ruin it like that.
I can tell you. So yeah, basically, I don't like beans. I'm kind of a texture eater. Although
Right.
honestly, I had beans in a burrito yesterday by accident, and I didn't immediately lose my mind. So I feel like I'm growing. We were in El Salvador, I think, and doing drifting with Ernie and Nick Apex and those bike maniacs. We were having a blast.
Costa Rica or Portugal? We weren't sure.
Maybe Costa Rica.
Okay.
That sounds right. Maybe
Yeah.
El Salvador, maybe Costa Rica. Anyway, whatever. And they'd put us up in like a resort for a few days afterwards, which is wild to even think about having that kind of time these days. And we're having fun, and they like bring us out, like whatever menus. Again, they're putting us up for free, like as part of the come out and drift for us, whatever package. And I put in my order, and I'm like, no frijoles, right? I'm like, I ordered probably fajitas or some white boy thing. And I'm like, no frijoles. And Jared's like, well, Jared gets on my case immediately. And I was like, I just told him, like, no frijoles, no big deal, whatever. And he's like, you don't like beans? And I'm like, I don't like the texture. It freaks me out. It's not my favorite. I was younger then, whatever. And again, like, I was just so much more of a firecracker. And they come out and there's like just beans all over my whole fucking plate. And I'm like, lady, you got to get the fuck, you got to take this back. And I'm like, woo. And Jared's like, all right, it's not a big deal. I'm like, you got to get this out of here. I give it back to her. No, I don't speak a lot of Spanish, but I thought I was pretty clear. Comes back still everywhere. It was like maybe more, right? And I'm like, what the fuck? And either Vaughn's like, what's your problem? And he starts like smashing them around my plate. And I'm like, they're getting on my case. And I just picked the plate up and I just threw it on the ground. I just like exploded it. I might have thrown it hard, right? Like I was like, fuck this. I'm sure we're hungover. I'm like getting pukey. I smashed it. I'm like, fuck you guys, whatever. And then Jared all of a sudden is like a demure housewife. He's like, I've never been so embarrassed in my life. And I was like, you need to get out more, buddy. But anyway, so I was a total dickhead about it. It was my bad, for sure. But I also had limits at the time that were kind of random. And it was
beans.
It was beans. I was not into it.
What the other one? You wanted to light the hay bales on fire during the finals in our window?
Is that right?
Yeah, I guess they had set out hay bales on the edge of the track, and you're like, it'd be fucking awesome if we just lit those on fire.
I don't remember that, but I believe it.
Okay.
I can't express what a time it was. We would all either, if the advent of like high resolution cell phone cameras were 20 years earlier, well, we'd either have
a different
different times, or
Yeah.
a lot of us would have been in jail. For sure.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Do you have a Tony Angelo story that you'd like?
I mean, we went through a lot. There was a lot of,
Yeah.
It was a lot of very rowdy. It was a really rowdy time. We stuck together pretty tight. There were certainly scraps and mild riots, and I was coming out of I was really growing up, but I also was like I'd lived in West Philly for a few years. I came out, it was like we were riding BMX and living like animals, and then it was at the time, like the year 2000 or whatever, in West Philly, like we used to have this, like the party would end. Every party would end when the fight started.
Right.
Like that's just how it was at the time. So it became very normalized to us. And then I came out here, and guys would get rowdy or like pushy or whatever, and I would be like, "Oh, these guys want to fight." And Andy Yen would be like, "No, they're going to shoot you. Like, you can't do that." Like,
A little different.
it's different here. And
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." But we figured a bunch of stuff out. But it was just
It's just different time.
it was a different time. I was a different person, and it was pretty fun. We also got to see so much. Being like early ambassadors, man, we got to go so many places. We drifted the Milwaukee Mile. We did Laguna Seca. Like it was really cool.
Yeah, and I mean, all over the countries. I mean, multiple countries.
Yeah,
You guys flew around a lot.
Tons of. We were wearing out those passports, and it was so wild. And then, I really think it helps as a person to get some perspective on the world. I'd been outside of like a 1 or 2 flights. I'd never left Pennsylvania.
Wow.
So it was really cool to sort of open up myself to see all the way that different people live and work and drive and build cars, and people aren't that different from you. No matter, like they want to raise hell and drink beers and drive their cars sideways, whether you're in like Singapore or Malaysia or whatever. So, and I became buddies. Like Tanku John, who's the best. Like we were thick as thieves. I haven't seen him in a while, but he's still, I consider him one of my best friends. Like, and then I was like, oh, I'm this dirtbag from outside of Philly. He's he's part of the royal family, technically, sort of, in Malaysia.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh, what Metallica album's your favorite? Oh, yeah. Like, we're just like the same. I'm like, oh,
Same guy.
How are we the same guy? You know?
Dude, once again, thank you so much for this. This was a ton of fun.
Yeah, man.
I'm really happy you're back into drifting in some way.
Yeah.
I'm stoked that you're keeping up, at least in some part, on the series still. Love for you to come around more. I understand how busy shit is. Pro Bro Downs on Sunday. You could get it. I don't know where you're at.
I'm going to be in Arizona.
Better be for a good reason.
It is.
right.
I'm racing some stuff.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
That gets a pass.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it would be super cool to get you out of events. I really hope you get the vet figured out a little bit more and you just keep drifting. And I hope it sparks it again. And then we, maybe see another drift build on Stay Tuned or something.
Yeah, maybe.
It'd be sick.
Cool.
Thanks again, dude. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
For everybody listening and watching at home, check out all the links below. Check out all Tony's stuff. I won't put your personal thing on there. But Instagram, YouTube, all that fun stuff. And hopefully you guys nerded out on this episode as much as I did.
Yeah.
Go check out the old DVDs because they are available. I found it on Amazon. Maybe I'll drop a link down below.
Okay.
Because your old DVDs are
They're still pretty
available.
rowdy. Yeah, they're still pretty
I went and rewatched one before this, and I was like, we need to make videos like that again.
I know,
Old
that was
skate
fun.
videos, sick.
Yeah, for sure. That was the time.
Yeah.
You could just make a DVD and put it out in the world.
Yeah.
It's
And
pretty
you can
cool.
still buy it, all these years later. Thanks again, dude. Thanks again for everybody for watching, and we'll catch you next week.